Welcome back, guys. We are back with another story, which is on what if Bella had supernatural powers since birth. So let's get started. I took in my surroundings as I drove away from the airport. All there was by the side of the road were trees, and more trees. Perfect, I thought happily. The trees would be perfect cover for flying around. I should explain. I'm Bella Swan. Well, my full name is Isabella, but I haven't used that name for at least a century. Flashback. Mom, can I stay in the garden for just a few more minutes? I shouted to my mother, who was in the kitchen. Yes, but try not to get too muddy, she shouted back. I quickly went back outside and began climbing my favorite tree. I'm only 11, but I have been climbing this tree forever. I was just nearing the branch I usually sit on, when I saw something small and sparkling hanging onto the tree. I quickly went to the branch and grabbed the creature just before it fell. I put it down on the branch and looked at it. I was shocked. I jumped back and nearly fell off the tree. It was like a miniature human, wearing a dress made of leaves, and it had wings. Please, don't be afraid, the creature said quietly. I attempted to nod. I am a fairy, it said. I still couldn't think of anything to say, so I just nodded again. I am truly sorry, but you must come with me, the fairy said, and I finally snapped out of my trance. What? Go where? I asked, really confused. To where I live. All humans that see fairies must be changed, the fairy replied. Changed to what? I said, slowly making my way to the edge of the branch. To a fairy. I'm ever so sorry. I truly am, she said. I tried getting away again, but everything went black. When I woke up, there were loads of small people surrounding me. I gasped, and they all looked worriedly at me. Someone get Amelia. One of the fairies cried out. I slowly sat up, trying not to scare them. I got some looks, but no one seemed too scared. I started wondering who this Amelia was. And where I was. And why I was surrounded by so many supposed fairies. Why did you call me? A woman said, who I presumed was Amelia. Well, see, this girl saved me from falling from a tree. My wings were broken so I couldn't fly. Anyway, I took her here to change her to a fairy, since she found out about us. But when I had finished, she stayed human size. Just like what happened when you were changed, the fairy said to the woman I thought was Amelia. Okay, clear the area. Let me talk to her in private. I need to find out more about her, Amelia said, and all the fairies immediately ran off. So, what's your name? Amelia asked. Isabella Swan, but call me Bella, I said out of habit. How old are you? Amelia asked again. I felt like we were playing 20 questions. 11. What's happening? I asked, the question just slipping out. I will tell you when I have figured out. Okay? She said, and there was a kindness to her voice. Okay, so how will you figure out? I asked, feeling more comfortable around Amelia. By doing some tests. Don't worry though, they won't hurt, she said, smiling at me for the first time. She was really beautiful. We spent the next few days doing random things, so she could work out what I was. I thought I was a human, and I told her that several times, but she said I definitely wasn't. I thought about my mom a lot, but I wasn't allowed to see her. I don't know why not. Okay, I know what you are, Amelia said after the many days of tests. Okay, what? I asked, trying to keep myself calm. You are part fairy. When you were being changed, something in your mind happened. You have some sort of mind shield, like me, she said. Okay, so I'm part fairy, part what? And what do you mean a shield like you? I asked, confused. I think part human. But you have almost all the fairy qualities, and with the shield, it blocks attacks on your mind. There are other supernatural beings, which have mind powers, but if they try to use them on you, they won't affect you, she said, and I was beginning to understand. Can I use my shield to protect other people? I asked, needing more information on myself. Yes, but it takes decades to learn. I will teach you. I can protect other people, Amelia said. A few decades? But she only looks at the oldest of 20? And she can do it? A few decades? But you only look about 20? I said, voicing my thoughts. That brings me on to your fairy qualities. I think you have the same as me, which are the shield, the ability to fly. You won't need to sleep. Your diet will consist of fruit and leaves, and you are immortal. You will stop aging when you reach 18. The reason I look 20 is because I was 20 when I was changed, she said. It was a lot to take in, so I tried to take it all in and make a mental note. Okay. I had forgotten about sleeping and seriously a diet of leaves and fruit? And I'm immortal? I stop aging? What? I said, my head beginning to spin. Don't worry, the diet is actually nice, you won't like anything else anymore. You are immortal, you'll get used to that too. And the not aging. There is other stuff as well. Have you looked in a mirror yet? Because you are stunning. That's a quality you have. And each fairy has their special power, which no one else possesses. Mine is protection. My shield is a big help. But, I can't tell when you will find yours, but when you do, you will know, she said, and I nodded slowly, taking it all in. I'm a fairy. End of flashback. I finally arrived at the house I would be staying in. It was quite big, it had 4 bedrooms. Not that I needed them. I went to the kitchen and got a drink of water. I wasn't very thirsty, but it gave me something to do. I looked around the big, empty house. I didn't consider it a home since I wouldn't be living here for long, and I wouldn't leave with fond memories. I turned on the TV to see if there was anything interesting. There wasn't, as usual. I decided to go into the forest and pick some leaves and fruits. I remember my initial disgust to my new diet, but I loved it. It was so fresh and wholesome. And Amelia taught me how to use magic to grow my own crops. They were even more delicious. I decided since I was hidden in a forest, I would do a bit of flying. Flying was my joy, I lived to fly. It took away all my worries. After a couple of hours collecting food and flying, I returned home. Out of my suitcase, I grabbed my gift from Amelia. It was a book, containing all about supernatural beings and everything about them, including fairies. She wrote the book, and we are the only 2 people to have this knowledge. I have read this book millions of times, and know how to spot every kind of supernatural creature. If they aren't in this book, they don't exist. I sat at the dining table and tucked into my basket of leaves and a couple of berries. I didn't have to worry about poisonous berries, because I was almost indestructible. I started to get ready nice and early, so as not to be late on my first day. I put a series of textbooks in my bag, and grabbed my keys. I also put my book from Amelia in my bag. I always kept it close, as it kept so much important knowledge and secrets. I got outside and unlocked my new car. It was a rusty red Chevy. It may have been cheap, but it helped keep me inconspicuous. I wouldn't stand out in forks. Well, with my car, anyway. My looks might say otherwise. I found the high school pretty quickly. It was just off the highway. I pulled in and saw a couple cars there already, and a few people looking at me already. This was going to be a long day. Just as I was getting out, I glanced over to a group of 5 people, all beautiful, all pale, and all with the same golden eye color. Vampires. And ones that drank animal blood. That was nice. I had met a lot of vampires in my time, and most of them were pretty feisty. It was a good thing they would have trouble destroying me, and their mind tricks wouldn't work on me. I chanced another glance at the coven of vampires. I noticed the blonde boy looked as though he was in pain. He was probably the most recent to not drinking human blood. Standing next to him was a short girl, with short black hair. She reminded me of a pixie I met a couple of decades ago. Those 2 were obviously together, as the short girl was hugging him and holding his hand. They were definitely mates. Next to them were another pair of mates. The girl was quite tall, even without the stilettos she was wearing. She had long blonde hair, with a slight wave to it. Even for a vampire she was beautiful. Next to her was a big, tall boy with short black hair. He was big in the fact he had huge muscles. He looked slightly intimidating, but I wasn't particularly worried. Then, I saw the 5th vampire. He was standing on his own, but he was by far the hottest of the lot. I can't believe I just thought that he had bronze-colored messy hair, and had more subtle muscles than the other one. Just then I noticed he was staring at me, with a puzzled look on his face. He probably had some sort of mind gift that wouldn't work on me. I smiled over at them, and walked over to the front office. "Hello, how can I help?" the receptionist said, barely looking up. "I'm the new girl here," I said back, which made her look up. "Hello, you must be Isabella Swan." "I'm Mrs. Cope, the receptionist," she replied. "Please, call me Bella," I said, out of habit. "Okay, Bella. Well, here is your timetable and map of the school. Also, you need to get this signed by all your teachers today," she said, while handing me 3 separate pieces of paper. I said thank you and then walked off to my first lesson, English. I handed the piece of paper to the teacher to be signed, and then he introduced me to the class. I quickly took a seat at the back, and vaguely listened to what he was saying. It didn't really matter seeing as I had done this topic too many times to count. The rest of the day went pretty much the same. At lunchtime I was encouraged to sit with this girl I met in English and some other lessons. Her name was Jessica Stanley, and she was obviously only being my friend to look popular. Also at the table was a girl named Lauren, who was very much the same as Jessica, another girl named Angela. She was nice and very polite. I could see I would be friends with her. There were 3 guys at the table, called Mike, Eric and Ben. They seemed alright, although Mike flirted with me most of the time, which was slightly disgusting. I went up to go and get some food. People usually questioned my food, but I just said it was because I was on a strict diet. They had a limited amount of fruit and vegetables, but they would do. I didn't need much food to keep me from hunger. We all chatted through lunch, while Jessica filled me in on all the gossip. I subtly asked about the vampires. Of course, I didn't call them vampires. Oh, they're the Cullens. The girl with the short, black hair is Alice Cullen. She's a bit strange. The guy who looks like he's in pain is Jasper Hale. The girl with the blonde hair is Rosalie Hale. She is the twin sister of Jasper, but they're completely opposite, apart from their looks. The guy she is sat next to is Emmett Cullen. The guy sat on his own is Edward Cullen. Even though he may be single, apparently none of the girls at the school are good enough for him, she said, and I heard some spite when she spoke about Edward. He had obviously rejected her. I let out a low chuckle, that no humans would hear. Edward seemed to have heard, as I heard him laugh out. I have pretty much as good hearing as vampires. A lot of my qualities are like them, apart from my diet. Edward had obviously been listening to mine and Jessica's conversation. I will keep that in mind, I said, referring to Edward. Yeah, you know, they are really strange, Jessica said, very matter-of-factly. Why? I said, thinking she was onto their secret. I saw Edward's head pop up too. Well, their adoptive parents, Esme and Carlisle, are really young. Only late 20s, and they are all together. Emmett and Rosalie are a couple, and so are Alice and Jasper. I mean, they live together. It's like, ew, she said, making a disgusted face. Yeah, but they aren't related, so I don't get why you find it so disgusting, Angela said. I really liked Angela. We continued going through the other lack of gossip in the school, until the bell rang. I remembered from my timetable that I had biology next. That would be fun. I made my way to the classroom and had a quick look around while the teacher, Mr. Banner, signed my slip. I saw the only spare seat was next to Edward Cullen, the vampire. I think that will be his new title. The Vamp. Anyway, I walked over to the seat, and took a sit down. He looked a bit anxious at first, but seemed to relax. Hello, I'm Edward Cullen. You're Bella Swan, he said, with a very attractive velvety voice. I could listen to it forever. Hey, how did you know I liked to be called Bella? It was a stupid question. He was a vampire, so he could hear. And I'm pretty sure he had some sort of mind power. But I wanted to call him up on his mistake. Just to continue the conversation. Oh, one of my siblings has a class with you, and told me you preferred Bella, he said, in his velvety voice again. I nodded, and the lesson began. We would be doing it practically today, one that I had done at least 100 times. Ah well, this is what is signed up for. We began the experiment, and Edward offered the microscope to me first. What a gentleman. It's prophase, I said, only taking a quick look. Mind if I take a look? Edward asked. Go ahead, vamp, but it is prophase. Yeah, go ahead, I said, pushing it towards him. It's prophase, the vamp said. A smug grin worked its way onto my face. Like I said, I couldn't stop myself. Throughout the lesson me and Edward talked, seeing as we finished the practical after about 10 minutes. He has obviously been to many high schools in his existence. I wonder how old he is. He spends the whole time asking questions about my life. I feel bad lying, but it has to be done. Amelia always told me never to reveal myself. I have a couple of times, but I have never told anyone my whole story. Weirdly, I want to tell Edward. Bella. Just as I entered the gym hall, I saw the other vampire, Alice, staring at me. I smiled and waved over to her. She seemed quite nice. Hey, she said, coming over to me. Hey, I said back, wondering what a vampire was doing in gym. They would have to focus really hard not to run at normally speed. Or trying not to use their normal strength. You must be Bella, she said, smiling. Yeah, you must be Alice, I said, smiling back. I can just tell we are going to be great friends, she said. I got the sense from her that she may have a mind power as well. But one that worked on me, so it must benefit me. Great, I said, as she pulled me along, skipping off. We went to the changing rooms and I quickly got changed. Even though I was a half fairy and supposed to be graceful, I was shocking at gym. We walked out into the gym hall, and I saw Jessica standing there. The coach announced today we would be playing volleyball. I advised everyone on my team not to let me hit the ball, as I would probably cause serious injury. Alice looked at me curiously, before getting ready to play. Over the course of the gym, I got closer to Alice, enough to call her a close friend. She was really nice and easy to talk to. We should hang out sometime, Alice said, when we were back in the changing rooms. Yeah, I would really like that, I said, really liking the idea. Okay, how about you come around to my house after school, she said, still smiling. Okay, I said. I wondered why she was inviting me, since I just looked like a normal human. Surely she would be scared about one of them hurting me. We walked out to the parking lot, and over to the silver Volvo that was their car. Everyone, this is Bella. Bella, this is Edward, Emmett, Rosalie and Jasper, Alice said, introducing us all. Rosalie looked at me skeptically, as did Edward, and pretty much everybody did. Emmett was just smiling though. Hey, I said, shyly. This was the first time in quite a few decades I had been nervous. I couldn't work out why, which didn't help things. They would all be able to hear my heart pick up, so I tried to calm in. Damn traitorous heart. I would offer you to ride to our house in our car, but it is already full, sorry. How about Edward rides with you in your car, to show you the way? Alice said, looking to Edward. At first he seemed nervous, but then he got reassured from something. Okay, show me to your car. Edward sighed, smiling a crooked smile at me. I lead him over to my rusty red Chevy, and he looked at it skeptically. Don't dismiss my Chevy before you ride in it, I said, giving him a pretend warning glance. He lowly chuckled and hopped in. We drove to his house pretty quickly, and when we got there, I saw it was massive. Not surprising, seeing as their parents probably worked and they wouldn't need to buy food or beds. I wonder if they had beds. Okay, we're here. And, now that I have taken a ride in your car, I am free to dismiss it. Edward sighed, smiling at me again. Hey, I said, softly punching him. I was almost as strong as vampires, but I didn't want to show him that. The Volvo was already here, so when we go out we went right in. I saw two other vampires, who I presumed were Esme and Carlisle. You have a lovely home, I said to Esme and Carlisle, but more to Esme. Thank you, dear, she said, giving me a warm, loving smile. She seemed nice. We went to the living room, where the rest of the coven were sat on the couches. They all smiled at me, though they seemed confused. Maybe Alice had told them something about me. Maybe she knew my secret. I needed extra information, so I had an idea. Mind if I quickly used the toilet? I asked no one in particular. Yeah, sure, it's the first door on the left up the stairs, Alice replied, so I smiled and nodded, and walked off. I went into the bathroom, and listened in to the hushed conversation they were having downstairs. How do you feel, Jasper? Alice asked. Good, I mean, she smells nice, but not in an edible way. Jasper said, and my heart rate picked up. They may be on to me, and coming here made things worse. I feel the same, the rest of them said separately. Okay, what does this mean? Rosalie asked. I don't know, but I can't read her mind. She is the only person ever that I can't read their mind. Edward sighed. So, I was right, he did have a mind power. Reading minds is pretty impressive. I'm surprised the Volturi has tried to get him to join them. Well, I looked into her future, but nothing interesting came up. It's like there is something hiding her from me. Alice said. Wow, 2 vampires in a coven of 7 that have powers. I have never come across that before. And someone who can read the future. Right now, I am relieved I have my shield. Her emotions, weird. She didn't seem one little bit scared of us, like humans. They are all a bit scared, or find us weird, but she didn't. She was calm, and fairly bored throughout today. Jasper said. So he can read emotions, that's pretty cool. So, almost have this coven had powers. They're a very powerful coven. Almost as powerful as the Volturi. I flushed the toilet and washed my hands, before heading downstairs. How are you, Bella? Alice asked. I'm good thanks, and you? I asked, being polite. I'm good too. We were just talking about you, Alice said, catching me off guard. Really? What were you saying about me? I said, adding a bit of annoyance into my voice. Who wouldn't be annoyed at people talking about them behind their backs? Oh, don't worry, we weren't saying anything mean. We were just saying you were different from other people in Forks. Alice said, motioning for me to sit next to her on the couch. I sat down, and began to speak. How do you mean? I asked, sounding confused. I have got good at lying over the years. Well, you don't seem to think of us as weird, and you didn't try and be popular, she said, smiling at me. Everyone else just looked nervous. Oh, well, you're not weird. People just need to get to know you. Emmett lowly laughed at that. Too low a human wouldn't hear, but I did. I don't care about being popular, I said honestly. Okay, was all Alice said. Edward, can we have a word with you, please? I heard Carlisle shout from another room. Edward got up, and Alice turned on the TV. I pretended to watch, but really, I was listening to Carlisle and Edward's conversation. What's happening, son? Carlisle said, quietly. I don't know, I really don't. Mine and Alice's powers don't work properly on her, and she doesn't fear us, Edward sighed, sounding worried. Well, I have only ever come across this sort of being once before. Her name was Amelia. I almost gasped, but managed to hold it in. I was pale already, but I think I went paler. Carlisle knows Amelia. How? When? Does he know about us? Amelia? Who's Amelia? Edward asked, and I was relieved he didn't know about her. But what if Carlisle was going to tell him? I had to go. I had to get out of here. I'm sorry Alice, but I have to get going now. I have just remembered that I have an essay I need to hand in tomorrow. I'm sorry, I said, stumbling out towards the door. Sure you can't just do it later? Alice said, obviously sensing something was wrong. I'm sorry, but I also need to make dinner as well, I said, opening the door and walking quickly to my car. Got in and started the engine. I drove as fast as my truck would go to my house. Once I got in, I began to relax a little and sat on the couch. I got out the essay I told Alice I needed to write and started it. Even though I had all night, I still decided to start it now. Take my mind off things. I jumped when I heard a knock at the door. I slowly got up to answer it, and gasped. Hello, Bella. Carlisle said at the door. Hey, do you want to come in? I said, gesturing inside my house. He nodded and followed me in. I shut the door behind me. Don't worry, the rest of my family think I am at the hospital. I said there was an emergency. Carlisle said, but I wasn't very reassured. What do you mean at the hospital? I asked, confused. How could he work at the hospital if he was a vampire? I have been a vampire for just over 350 years. I have never tasted human blood, and I am now immune to the smell, he said, as if he heard my thoughts. Oh, was all I could manage. I know you know about us, Bella. Your friend, Amelia, also knew. She had quite an extensive knowledge of the supernatural. Just as I presume you did, Carlisle said. She's not my friend. No one will ever know how much knowledge me and Amelia share, I said. I always got defensive whenever Amelia was mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry for my mistake. So I presume this means you are the same being as her. Carlisle said. He was still calm despite my rudeness and aggression previously. Depends on what you think she is, I said. I wanted him to say what I was. For all I know, he could be bluffing. A half fairy. The reason you aren't a full fairy is because your mind acts like a shield. Which is why my children's talents do not work on you, apart from Jasper, Carlisle said. That's correct. Why do you refer to them as your children? They can't be if Esme, your mate, is a vampire. Even then they would only be half-breeds, which they are not, I said, and immediately realized I had said too much. Don't worry, Bella, Amelia had already told me that, Carlisle said. How much did she tell you? I asked, getting annoyed that Amelia had shared our knowledge. Not much more than you have said. I came here to give you a couple of propositions. 1. If you want, me and my family can move away from the area, to stop them trying to find out about you. 2. I will warn my family to stop trying to find out about you, and if they do there would be severe consequences. 3. You can tell my family what you are, and that is all. And 4. You can join my coven. But, that would probably mean you would have to tell them what you are. Carlyle said, very friendly and calm. Not the first one. I don't want to disrupt your life. If anyone is going to move, it would be easier for me to. Why are you being so kind? I asked, confused as to why he wouldn't just tell his family about me and try to exploit me. No one has to move if you are okay with that. I am being kind, because that's who I am. I believe my family to be different from other vampires. We call ourselves a family, not a coven. We drink animals' blood, so that we can live with humans and have normal lives. I could see the truth in his words. Okay. I need time to think. I have been alone for over a century. I can't image living with people, to have a family. I always used to wish for a family, but it feels so strange. And I wouldn't really believe that I was part of you. I mean, I'm not a vampire, I said, voicing my concerned thoughts. If you did join us, we wouldn't make you feel left out. Alice and Edward have taken an immediate liking to you. Emmett and Jasper seem to like you too. Rose is always weary of new people. I will allow you to have all the time you need to think it through. For now, what would you like me to tell my children? I can warn them to stop trying to investigate you, if you want, Carlyle asked me. Okay, if you tell them to stop, I believe that will only make them more determined. Maybe if they work out who I am, it would be easier than me telling them, I half stated, half asked. Okay, I can do that. I hope to see more of you, Bella, Carlyle said, before walking out the door. I lay on the couch and started to think about Amelia. I hadn't allowed myself to do since the day we parted. I started quietly crying for hours. I finally stopped and grabbed a few leaves off a tree in the garden. I took them back to the living room and began to eat them while writing my essay. I was done before long, so I decided to read the book again. I went straight to the vampire section and read it closely. I needed to know everything about them if there was a possibility I could soon be living with them. I looked at the clock and saw it was about time for me to leave for school. I made sure everything was in my bag and headed out to my truck. I noticed that it was a bit icy today, not that it would be a probably since I was now a graceful fairy, sort of. I hopped in and drove at full speed towards school. Full speed wasn't pretty fast, but faster than most humans would go. I pulled into school and slowed down. I got out and stood by the side of my Chevy, or Charlie, as I named him, and waited for the Cullen clan to arrive. They were later than usual, and I was beginning to get a bit worried. I was going to breathe out a sigh of relief when they finally arrived, but held it in just in time. I didn't want them thinking I was waiting for them. I tried to tear my gaze away from them, and began looking to everyone else. However, I felt them staring at me, so I glanced back. They were on the other side of the car park, but I could still hear them. Before I realized, Tyler Crawley was in his van, trying to steer it away from me. I wasn't worried at first, I could easily push it away. But people would probably wonder how I had pushed a van away. I could run, but then people would see how fast I was. Human speed would be too slow to get away. I crouched on the floor, and out of human instinct put my hands over my head, protecting it. Before I knew it, Edward was standing next to me, his hand next to a big dent in Tyler's van. I gasped, looking into his face. As quick as he had come, he was gone again. I suspected that was because he thought he had just revealed himself to me. I inwardly laughed. That's when I noticed the crowd of people forming around me. They were all asking if I was all right. I nodded, and began to get up, when someone from the ambulance pushed me back down. You need to stay down, miss, you hit your head in the collision, the paramedic said. Excuse me, I am a doctor. I need to take a look at her. I heard Carlyle's voice through all the chaos. Thanks, I whispered quietly to Carlyle. He began pretend checking me over while he responded. I'm going to take you up to the hospital, so people don't get suspicious, but then I will make sure no other doctor or nurse comes near you, okay? I said so quietly and quickly no humans would see. I nodded, and he helped me up. We walked to the ambulance and headed to hospital. Unfortunately, I was placed opposite Tyler, who kept continually apologizing. I said it was okay. But he still insisted on apologizing. Eventually, his nurse came and closed his curtain, and I was thankful. "Bella, are you okay?" Edward's worried voice sounded through. "Yeah, but what the hell happened?" I asked, using my most surprised voice. I thought it was quite convincing, however, that was usually a bad sign. "What do you mean? Can you not remember?" he asked, sounding more worried and slightly relieved. "Regretting your stupid actions now and revealing yourself, are we? The fact that 1 minute you were the opposite side of the car park, and the next you were right by my side," I said, still using my shocked and surprised voice. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was standing right next to you, Bella," he said. He sounded pretty convincing, but my sight has never failed me. "Then how do you explain your hand imprint in Tyler's van?" I said, knowing he couldn't get out of this one. See how he likes to be interrogated. "That was," he stuttered, not finishing. "What the hell is going on with you, Edward?" I asked, hoping he would just tell me he was a vampire. Then I could join their coven, without having to tell them who I was first. "I don't know what you mean," he said, again sounding fairly convincing. "You do. You talk as though you are from a different age. You never eat at school. You managed to get across the car park in less than a second. You managed to dent Tyler's van with your hand. Do you want me to go on?" I said. "No, but you don't exactly act normal yourself," he said, and now I was wondering if he would accidentally reveal himself. "How do you mean?" I said, feeling sly. "You come to this school, and you never listen in lessons, yet you are top of all the classes." And other stuff. He was cut off by Carlisle. "Hey Bella, how are we doing?" Carlisle asked. I really liked Carlisle, he was very friendly. "I'm good. You know, if I wasn't for you, son, I probably wouldn't be here," I said, quickly winking to Carlisle. I swear I saw him suppress a laugh. "Bella," Carlisle asked Edward to leave while he checked me over. After a while, he spoke to me again, so I presumed this meant that Edward and the other vamps were out of the way, and wouldn't hear our conversation. "What do you mean about Edward?" Carlisle quickly and quietly asked. "I don't know if I should be the one to tell you," I said, feeling bad that Edward had just risked his family for me, when he thought I was a defenseless human. "It would be easier for you to tell me, as then I would hear the true story. Edward would make it out to be worse, and Rosalie would just shout and scream," he said. "Okay." I was standing by my Chevy, when I noticed Tyler's van coming towards me. I was about to act, when I realized anything I did would expose me. In the end I just crouched on the floor, covering my head. Then, Edward came running over, at vampire speed, and pushed the van away. Then he ran off again, as quickly as he had come. I said, in one breath. "Okay, do you know if anyone saw?" Carlisle asked, but he still seemed fairly calm. "I don't think so. I think the worst bit will be explaining what happened. I might just go for the 'I hit my head and can't remember' story. That seems easiest," I said, trying to make up for what I had caused. "Are you sure?" he asked me. "Yeah, I'm an awesome liar," I said, chuckling. I was okay. But only to humans. Vamps and such would see right through it, but, ah well. He nodded, then I heard voices in the corridor. I listened closely and noticed they were the Cullens. "Oh my God, Bella, are you okay?" Alice exclaimed as she came running in. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, already bored of telling people I was fine. "Are you sure? That accident looked pretty nasty," Alice said again. Then I noticed how the entire Cullen clan was here, and began wondering why. Yeah, I'm fine. Honestly," I said, as I looked around again. I noticed Rosalie standing in the corner, looking like she wished she was anywhere but here. "Why come then, vamp?" I mentally asked. "We brought you these," Alice squealed, holding up a fruit basket. "It looked so delicious, I felt like I needed more trips to the hospital to get more." "Thanks," I said, smiling to show my appreciation. She placed it on my bedside table. Then they all left, bar Edward. I presumed they would all listen in outside. "You don't have to eat it if you don't want to," Edward sighed, as I popped a grape into my mouth. It was so delicious, I felt like I was in heaven. "Don't worry, I definitely want to eat this. It's so good. You want some?" I asked, knowing he wouldn't accept. "I'm alright thanks. How can you find a grape so delicious?" he asked, looking very puzzled with me. "Because they are so delicious. Along with everything else in here. This is like a collection of my favorite foods. I said, eyeing up a kiwi fruit. You're pretty weird. Most teenagers would prefer chocolate of sweets. I scrunched my nose up at chocolate and sweets. I tried them once, they were vile. How could people enjoy such things? Ew. Anyway, you say I'm weird, yet you haven't explained yourself yet, I said, eyeing him up. Oh, well, that is, he started, but then Rosalie burst in. I don't think you should talk to him like that, she practically shouted, while pointing her finger at me. I wasn't scared, what was the worst she could do? I was definitely stronger than her, and faster. Well, maybe if he explained himself, I said, as calmly as was half-angelly possible. Explained himself? I think you should explain yourself, she shouted again. What do you mean explain myself? I said, and I knew if she were to answer honestly she would have to tell me about vampires. Gotcha. You know full well what I mean, she finished, before storming out. She was one diva vampire. That's a first. I'm ever so sorry for my sister's behavior, Edward Said. Don't be, I can handle myself, I said while smiling. He looked confused. You weren't scared just then? He asked, and I thought about my answer. No, I answered, honestly. I would occasionally give them little bits to help them work out what I was. They would never manage it, but hopefully they would reveal themselves. Edward silently left, and I lay back for a while, just relaxing. If I could sleep, now would be the perfect time. I heard the door open, and saw Carlyle come in. Hey there, Bella. I am ever so sorry about my daughter Rosalie, he said, and I could see the apology in his eyes. Apology accepted, I said, smiling at him. Okay. Well, I just wanted to come here and say you are free to be discharged, he said, smiling as he handed me a piece of paper to sign. I quickly signed it, and left the hospital. I had to walk back to school to get my car, seeing as I was taken here by ambulance. I didn't mind though, walking was fun. I slowly walked along the highway back to school, getting lost in my thoughts. Everything was quite relaxing. Running away, little girl? A man's voice said behind me. No, actually, just going to pick up my truck from school, I said, not in the least bit scared. I could always give you a lift there, my car is just across the road, he said, pointing to a random car that I'm pretty sure wasn't his. I'm fine thanks, I enjoy walking, I said, hoping he would get the idea to leave me alone. Sure, he said, coming close to my face. I smacked his face away, and turned around to see what he looked like. I realized he was a vampire, but the human drinking kind. What was it with forks and vampires? Someone's a little bit feisty, he teasingly said, while grabbing my arm. Right, I have had enough. In less than a second I had changed the position round so that he was now in a headlock. What the hell kind of human are you? He said, getting angry that I was stronger than him. I just laughed. Let's just say I'm not human, I said, laughing again. What? Are you a vampire? He asked, looking worried. Oh no, something much worse. I smiled at him, before throwing him as far as possible. I heard a loud crash as he hit a tree a few miles away. I quickly ran in the forest at full speed towards school. I got in my Chevy and drove back home, looking out for the unknown vampire. I was particularly worried, just wasn't really in the mood to fight. I got home and settled down with my basket of fruit. It was the most delicious fruit I had ever tasted. Wait, had they done something to make it taste thing good? Even hand-picked fruit doesn't taste this good. I wondered about what they could have done to it. I came up with nothing, so I gave up. I was full, anyway. I looked at the clock and started to get ready for school. Luckily, no vampire reappearances had happened, which I was relieved about. I was almost ready when there was a knock at the door. I curiously opened it. Hello, Bella. Rosalie coldly said to me. I internally groaned. What had I done now? What do you want? I asked, while she invited herself in. I muttered under my breath, yes, you can come in, Your Highness. What was that? She snapped her head up. I didn't say anything. That a human would be able to hear, I added in my head. You said, yes, you can come in, Your Highness, she said, looking at me like a fool. How could you hear that? I didn't even whisper it, I asked, trying to sound perplexed. Oh, stop the pretense and turn on the TV, she coldly said. What pretense? And guests don't usually barge in and demand things, I said, shocked with her rudeness. Instead, she turned on the TV and put in a DVD. She played, and I saw that it was me and that vampire from last night. I looked to her, shocked. So, that's the pretense I'm on about, she said, looking at me victoriously. I decided to wind her up a bit. How did that happen? I mean, how did that person throw that other person so far? I asked, adding confusion to my voice. This was too fun and easy. Are you serious? I know what you are, Bella, she stated. I was worried at this point, she wouldn't have a clue. What I am? Are you on drugs or something? I asked, almost laughing at the look on her face. You're a vampire, she stated, clearly. Am I hearing things right? Do you actually believe vampires are real? I said, adding a slightly nervous laugh onto the end. Of course I do, because I am one, and I'm pretty sure you are too. Look, I may seem like I am being a complete and utter bitch, but do you want to know why I am doing this? She finished, looking pleadingly at me. Go ahead then, I said, sitting down on the couch. It's because of Edward. He is in love with you. I can see it so clearly. Every time he is around you he is happier and always focuses on you. I know what that's like. I'm in love with Emmett, so I can tell. You know vampires, they mate for life. She finished, then proceeded to join me on the couch. It took a few moments for it to sink in. Edward loves me. Why? Of course I know about vampires and their mating lives, but me? Seriously? Whoa, are you serious? I asked, making sure she wasn't tricking me. But, I saw the look in her eyes. Yes. Does this mean you are admitting you are a vampire? She asked, looking hopeful. Maybe she wasn't as mean as I thought. No, because I'm not. Seriously. I have a lot of vampire characteristics, but I'm not a vampire, I said, trying to show my honesty. Then, what? A half-human half-vampire? She asked. No, but you are close with half-human, I said, giving her a small smile. I don't know why I wouldn't tell her, she would never guess. So you're a half-breed. Wait, how do you know so much about vampires? She asked, sounding worried. Don't worry, I'm not using the information about you. It's not just vampires I know lots about. It's everything supernatural. And yes, I am a half-breed. Sort of. It's rather confusing, I said, thinking about it, I even confused myself. Then, just tell me. If you don't want me to, I won't tell any of the others, she said, and I saw she was being truthful. Okay, for now, I would rather they didn't know, but I will tell them later. I am a half-fairy. I heard her gasp at this. When I was 11, I was climbing up one of the trees in my back garden. I saw something almost fall off the branch, so I quickly saved it. The creature turned out to be a fairy with broken wings. Because I had found out about their kind, she said she would have to turn me into a fairy, to protect them. I protested, but I was soon knocked unconscious. When I woke up, loads of fairies were surrounding me. One of them called for someone named Amelia to come. After she did, we went off and talked. She told me that like her, my mind was a shield, so when they tried to change me into a fairy, my mind partially blocked it. That's why I still look like a human. But I can still fly and stuff. Even though I'm immortal, I continued to age until I turned 18. And the reason I seem like I am on a constant diet is because fairies live on fruit, vegetables, plants and leaves. Chocolate is absolutely disgusting, I said, hoping she would believe me. Oh my, Carlisle mentioned something about Amelia? Rosalie half asked, half stated. Yeah, the same Amelia. Carlisle knows all about me. He even asked if I wanted to join your coven, I said, and watched Rosalie gasp. You so should. Alice would love it, along with Edward. Then there's Emmy, who gets excited about everything. And Jasper would love to know more about you. And Esme would love to have another daughter, Rosalie said. And this was the first time I had seen her happy and smiling at me. I don't know. I'm scared, I said, feeling she would understand. Why? She asked me. Because Amelia gave me a lot of knowledge of the supernatural world. It's all in a book. If it isn't in the book, it doesn't exist. I'm just worried Carlisle or anyone else might use me for my knowledge. It has happened before, but I luckily got away in time. I have lived on my own for so long, I have forgotten what it feels like to be a part of a family. I said, silently breaking down in tears. I'm going to be honest with you now. Some of them will ask about you, and try and find out more about you. Of course they will, it's natural to be curious. But, if you politely say no, then they won't push it. I know we haven't given you a lot to trust us with, considering our actions, but, if you joined us, we would never use you. Edward would certainly not allow it. And, Carlyle, he is the friendliest man ever, even if he is a vampire. She said, and I could see the trust in her eyes. Okay, I will give it a big thought. I said, feeling myself smile. Okay, I really hope you join us. I should probably get going now. Rosalie said, getting up from the couch. We walked over to the door, and said goodbye. Then, she hugged me, and left. I went back in the living room, and tried to remember the last time someone hugged me. I felt loved, which is definitely one of the best feelings. Bella. I drove to school, feeling nervous. Rosalie now knows everything about me, and we have somewhat become friends. The others are surely going to notice her different attitude towards me. And Edward. Rosalie said he loved me. How do I deal with that? I don't know how I feel about him. He seems nice, but I don't really know him. How did my life become so complicated? And breathe. I pulled into Forks High School and saw all the Cullens turn towards me. They all stared at my car, and watched as I pulled in. I pretend I didn't notice them. I got out and walked over to the Cullens. A couple of them had shocked looks on their faces, but Alice, the future teller, obviously saw me doing this, so she wasn't shocked. Edward seemed to have read her mind, and so he wasn't shocked either. Rosalie also wasn't, she just smiled timidly at me. Hey, I said as I had got close enough. They all smiled back at me. I'm Edward, I just wanted to thank you for the other day. It really meant a lot, I said, smiling at him. It really did mean a lot, he obviously cared about me enough to save me. That's all right, he said, smiling back. Jasper was looking at me curiously, but I just shrugged it off. Okay, I have to get going now, I don't want to be late, I said, beginning to walk away. Oh, Bella, you have English, right? So do I. So maybe we could walk together? Alice said, as she had already caught up with me. Yeah, I would like that, I said, smiling to her. I was thinking we should get to know each other better, Bella. How about we go shopping after school? She said, looking extremely excited about the idea of shopping. Yeah, that would be cool. I have been shopping since I arrived, I said, smiling at the thought of shopping. I used to hate shopping, but right now I was going through a phase where I quite enjoyed it. It helped me to relax. We talked about our upcoming shopping trip the rest of the way to English, and parted when we got there. She went and sat at the front, next to Angela, and I took my seat at the back. Hey Bella, you're alive, Mike Newton said, while sitting beside me. I chuckled at that. I wouldn't call myself alive. Well, not in the terms he means. Yeah, it's a miracle, I said, playing along in hope he would go. Yeah, I heard Cullen saved you, he said, and I became alert. Did he see something? Well, this is the time to start the acting. I don't really remember what happened. I think I hit my head, I said to Mike, hoping he wouldn't press for details. Oh really, sorry. It is just a rumor, dunno who started it, he said, just as the teacher came in. Mike went back to his proper seat, and thankfully, left me alone. The person I usually sit next to was ill today. I thought about what Mike said about how Edward saved me. I knew for a fact he did, but what if someone else also did? I needed to tell Rosalie, and a far enough distance so that the others wouldn't hear. The lesson was over pretty slowly, as were my other lessons before lunch. I wasn't paying attention, but I didn't really need to. As I was walking to the lunch hall, I saw Rosalie. Luckily, she wasn't with anyone else. I need to talk to you, I said, quickly and quietly to her. What about? You seem worried, she said, beginning to get worried herself. It needs to be away from the others, I said to her, and she nodded in understanding. We went to the other side of the building, and Rosalie blocked her thoughts by singing in her head. Okay, what's happened? She asked. You know the accident yesterday? Well, Mike came up to me before and said that he heard Edward had saved me. I said I couldn't remember because I thought I hit my head, and then he said that there was a rumor going round. He didn't know who started it, I said, taking in Rosalie's expression. She looked slightly worried. Okay, I will speak with my family tonight. Have you thought any more about Carlyle's proposition? She asked me. Kinda, I'm still a bit unsure, I said, and she smiled at me. Take all the time you need, we have forever, she said, winking at me as she hurried to the dining room. I waited a bit, so that it wouldn't look suspicious. Maybe I should go to the library? I decided I would, so I started walking towards the library. There were only 2 other students in here. For a laugh, I decided to look up some books about supernatural beings. It was always funny to read these books, as everything was usually the opposite of the creature. However, they got most vampires right as being evil, human drinking monsters, but there were some nice ones. Like Carlyle. But the Volturi, they were pretty evil. I was so glad I didn't have to follow their rules. If I really wanted to, I could create my own royalty for all supernatural creatures with my powers, but that never seemed appealing. I wanted these people and animals to live as freely as was possible. Like me. I picked up one vampire book, and sat down reading. I laughed at it quite a few times, and got some curious looks. If only they knew. I glanced up at the clock, and saw it was about time for biology. I put the book back where I found it, and grabbed all my stuff. I slowly walked towards biology, just enjoying the fresh air, and the smell of new rain. It was quite cold, but for my body, that wasn't an issue. My body, you see, adjusted to whatever temperature it needed to be, so I could wear a dress in winter or thermal clothes in summer if I really wanted to. Sometimes I did, just so I could laugh at the funny looks people gave me. I arrived at biology, and almost groaned when I saw the only other people in there were Tyler, Mike and Eric. They would probably pester me about something. "Hey Bella, where were you at lunch today?" Mike asked, as I walked to my seat. "Oh, I just wanted to look something up in the library," I said, shrugging it off. "Oh, right. Well, you should have been at lunch," Mike said. "What was so great about lunch?" "Why? What is so wonderful about the cafeteria?" I sarcastically asked, earn a chuckle from Eric and Tyler. "Well, Rosalie Hale came in late, which is weird, because the Cullen Hales are never late for anything." Then, she said something to the rest of them, and Edward and Alice both ran out of the cafeteria. He said, looking proud for sharing knowledge. I was immediately curious what had happened. And worried. What was so bad that they had to go against everything everyone knew about them? "Oh right, doesn't sound that weird," I said, trying to play it down. By the look on his face, it didn't seem to work. That's not all. After Alice and Edward left, there was a loud banging on a tree outside, and a loud bark. Some people went out to have a look, and apparently one person saw a huge wolf walking off into the forest. Mike said. He finished after that, as other people came in. I considered darting out of the classroom, to see if Alice and Edward were okay. From the description from Mike, it sounded as though there were werewolves here. That was bad news, as werewolves and vampires were enemies. But why would they fight? The Cullens don't drink human blood, and aren't raising any sort of army? Was just about to run out when Edward came in. He looked extremely angry, the angriest I had ever seen him. All the students shrank back in fear. "Bella, I need to talk to you after school," he said harshly. Wait, what had I done? "You could be a bit more polite," I said, getting annoyed at him. And, it had definitely been a werewolf, I could smell it on him. "If you hadn't have lied, I wouldn't have needed to take this tone with you," he said, as harsh as before. So much for Rosalie saying he loved me. "Lied about what, exactly?" I said, pretty angry. He may say about my humanity, but I have not once called myself a human to him. "I will tell you after school," he said, and then faced the opposite direction from me. Fine, if that's how it was going to be, then, I don't care. I don't have to meet with him after school, he couldn't make me. Then, I had an idea to get him to talk to me. Alice is a psychic, who tells the future. If I decide that I will skip gym and go home, Alice will probably see this. Then, Edward will see it, and stop the silent treatment. I will skip gym and go home to avoid Edward. I will skip gym and go home to avoid Edward. I will skip gym and go home to avoid Edward. I mentally repeated a few times. Suddenly, Edward's head snapped up, and he looked at me. Ah, so my plan did work. I gave myself a mental pat on the back. "So, how are you finding forks?" Edward asked me, as everyone was talking since we were doing a practical. "It could be better. Anyway, I thought you were ignoring me," I said, while mentally repeating, "I will skip gym and go home to avoid Edward," again. I realized that was rude of me, he said, trying to be polite, but I could tell he was still angry. So, it really was me he was annoyed with. "You know what else is rude of you? Demanding I meet with you," I said, before carrying on with the practical. "Sorry, would you like to meet up with me after school, Bella?" he said, trying to use his most polite and persuasive tone. If I were human, that would work, however. "No," I simply said. He stared at me, flabbergasted. I asked you politely though, he said, going back to his harsh ways. Yes, but that doesn't remove the fact you were rude to begin with. You shouldn't have to be told to be polite, I said, not looking at him. Which was actually quite hard. Look, Bella, I don't care if you don't want to, me and my family need to talk to you. If you just go home, we will go there to find you, he said, again, harshly. Threatening me now, are we? I said, while smiling at him. What was his problem? You're not scared, he asked, seeming confused, and there was no trace of harshness in his voice. No, why would I be? I said, almost laughing. How much would he be wishing right now to say, because I'm a vampire? After that, it was back to silence again. But I was happy, because I now knew he was annoyed at me. I tried to think of anything I could have done, but didn't have a clue. The bell rang, and I packed up my stuff. Edward was still standing there, but his stuff was all packed up. I packed my stuff up slower, so that I could see if he was waiting for me or not. He began looking at me, so I guessed he was waiting for me. I pretended not to notice, and left as soon as I was ready. I felt Edward grab my arm, but not with full strength. What the hell are you doing? Get off me, I half yelled, pulling my arm away. Bella, I need to talk to you. You can skip gym, he said, looking at me in a pleading way. I won't skip gym for you, seeing as you are being rude, I said, while turning and walking away. Now is not the time for pleasantries. I need you to come to the car park to have a discussion with my family, he said, still with a pleading look on his face. A discussion about what? I asked. I will tell you, but not in school. Somewhere in private, he said to me. I walked away from him, but headed towards the car park instead. He seemed to notice this. Just to let you know before you get cocky, I am not doing this for you. It is for Carlisle and Rosalie, I said, still not looking at them and walking in front. What? Why them? He asked, sounding confused. He sounded cute when he was confused. Focus, Bella. All in good time, I said, and we finally reached the car park. Sure enough, his family was waiting for him in his Volvo. They all gave him different looks, and I noticed Alice was slightly hiding behind Jasper. She seemed nervous. I had never seen her like this. They were all probably telling him things in his head. I walked towards my truck, and sure their looks of confusion. Edward told them to get in, and we all set off. I remember the route to the Cullens' house, as I had been there once before and had somewhat of a photographic memory. There was a big gap between my Chevy and Edward's Volvo, seeing as his top speed was about 10 times mine. When I reached their house, they were already there. Esme opened the door and greeted me, welcoming me in. I walked into the living room and saw them looking at me expectantly. This was going to be fun. I slowly walked in and just stood there. It wasn't uncomfortable, but the silence was. Jasper seemed to notice everyone's discomfort and sent waves of calm around the room. Everyone seemed to lighten up a little, but still, no one spoke. Anyone going to tell me why Edward demanded I come here? I said, deciding to be the first one to speak. I could be waiting for an eternity. Literally, otherwise. You're not who you say you are, Edward stated, staring right at me. I held the stare, seeing when he would give up. Eventually, he did, and I did a mental well done dance. What do you mean by that? I asked, staring at Edward. Rosalie looked at me, as she knew how defensive I would go to protect my identity. Look, we know you aren't human, he said, and I stared in disbelief. I was actually an alright actress. What? But, if I'm not human, then, what else could I be? I asked, in disbelief. Well, fake disbelief. Maybe she is a human. Maybe we got it wrong, Emmett quickly asked. Think I couldn't hear? I just stood here normally. Let's see. Bella, can you hear me? Edward sighed, quickly and quietly. I kept my face looking oblivious. You don't say something like that. Of course she isn't going to say yes, Emmett said, and he had a fair point. Edward turned his attention back to me. I believe you know that there are supernatural things, and that, for some reason, you have chosen to hide your true identity from us. Edward sighed, obviously not believing Emmett. What? Why would I lie? I asked, trying to keep my confused voice. I don't know. Because you're scared or something, Edward trailed off, obviously hoping for me to answer. Scared of what? I asked him. Maybe this time he will say because I'm a vampire? Of us, he simply said. Us? Who do you mean? I asked him. Everyone in this house. he said, pointing at everyone. Why would I be scared of you? I said. Because of what we are. He was giving as brief answers as I was. What are you? I asked again, and I said. His features turned to annoyance. Look, Bella, I know you know what we are. Vampires. That's right. I know you know, so, give up your pretense. He said, half shouting. I just stood there, unsure of what to do. Bella, I think you should tell them, Rosalie said, walking over to my side and hugging me. Fine. I know all you guys are vampires. I have known from the very first second I saw you. I have known ever since. And, how you drink animal blood. Pretty clear from your eyes. I said, pointing at their eyes. How do you know? Are you going to tell them about us? Edward asked, going from being angry to worried. It would be a lot easier if Carlisle was here. I know about you because of who I am. I can tell vampires, smell them out. Along with other things, like werewolves. Depends who us are, I said to him. Why would it be easier if Carlisle was here? And, who are you? Us would mean humans, he said, still fairly worried. Carlisle knows who I am. He was close to my friend, I believe. I won't tell humans. Guess, I said to him. Guess what? He asked, confused. What I am, I said, and I heard Rosalie chuckle. He would never guess. Well, some sort of half-breed, half-human and half-something. I'm guessing not vampire. But, you do have some sort of power, like a mind shield. That's why I can't read your thoughts, he said, and I was surprised. Wow, I thought it would take you forever to guess. But, all of that you said was right. I must say though, Rosalie gave up fairly quickly, I said, winking at Rosalie. She just laughed and playfully pushed me. Okay, we give up, Alice said, jumping up and looking excited about finding out what I was. Okay, I'm a half-human, half-fairy, I said, watching them all gasp and stay perfectly still. Well, I didn't see that coming, Emmett said, releasing everyone from their trance. What? How? They all asked, so I said what I had said to Rosalie. They all looked shocked, again. So, you know Carlisle? Edward asked, looking shocked. Not directly, but he knows Amelia and she briefly told me about him, I said. How old are you, Bella? Alice asked, who was sitting next to me on the couch. Well, my human birth year is the 13th of September 1723, which makes me 288 years old. Also, I was changed on my birthday, I said, taking in all their faces. This was actually quite funny. They carried on questioning me, until Carlisle came back from his job at the hospital. Edward explained to me that Carlisle had never tasted human blood and in his over 300 years of existence he had managed to become immune to it. Oh, hello Bella. Carlisle greeted as he came into the living room. It's all right Dad, we know she knows we are vampires, and we know that she is a half-fairy, Edward informed his dad. We all began chatting again, and I felt comfortable, like I was with my family. Bella, I should probably be off now, I need to get home, I said, beginning to stand up. Are you sure? You can stay if you want, Edward sighed, walking over to me. Maybe another night, I said, smiling to him. He still seemed a bit sad, but nonetheless, walked me to my car. Good night, Bella. Edward sighed, as he leant down and kissed me on my cheek. My pointless heart did a flip, and I felt like I was in heaven. Gee, good night too, Edward, I said, completely failing at acting cool and calm. He noticed and laughed as I hopped into the Chevy. I smiled as I drove away, with Edward watching me. I got back home, and went over and over in my head that evening. It had been perfect. Well, maybe not the first part with Edward all angry with me, and almost biting my head off. Literally, I never asked Edward what happened with the wolves. I suppose I will have to ask him tomorrow. My thoughts were broken off by a knock at the door. I quickly glanced at the clock on the wall and saw it was 11 p.m. Who would want to speak to me now? Anyway, I still got off the couch and made my way to the door. I slowly opening it, getting a little nervous about who was there. Hi Isabella. A timid voice said from the outside. It may have been dark, but I knew exactly who it was. I slammed the door in her face, and went back to the living room. Please Isabella, just talk to me. I need to. Amelia, pleading with me. I ignored her for a while, but she stayed out there, pleading with me. I reluctantly got up and opened the door, to tell her to her face to leave me alone. Look, I thought you made it perfectly clear you did not want any contact with me. I accepted that, and left you alone. I would appreciate it if you were to do the same. I said, trying to remain polite even though all I wanted to do was shout and scream. Please Isabella, I'm sorry, can't we just talk? There is something I desperately need to tell you, Emilia said, looking worried. So, you ignore me for a couple of centuries, but as soon as you need me, you come running back. Anyway, I thought you were with your boyfriend. I spat at her, not being able to control my emotions. Where was Jasper when I needed him? Isabella, I have been trying to find you for ages, I just didn't know where to look, she said, and I hated to admit it, but I could see the truth in her eyes. Fine, come in then, I said, as I walked back inside my house. You have a lovely house, Emilia said to me. Cut the pleasantries, and just tell me what you came here to say, I said, just wanting this to be over. After I, parted from you, I went around looking for other supernatural creatures to befriend. I found this vampire, and he drank blood. At first, I stayed away from him, as I don't like vampires that murder defenseless humans, but he was very persistent. After a while, I found out that he was Arrow, one of the Volturi leaders. I instantly moved away, but he kept following me. He knew that I wasn't a human, as he said my scent was appealing but not in an edible way. He tried to capture me, and take me to his castle in Italy. Obviously I was stronger than him, but this just made him more curious. Then, he found Matthew, and started torturing him. As he is only a shapeshifter, their mind tricks worked on him. They forced information out of me, and in return, me and Matthew would be set free. So, I told him about you, she said, looking extremely apologetic. You told a sadistic vampire about me to save your stupid boyfriend? I shouted at her, but she didn't seem shocked. How could she expect me to act differently? I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking straight. I came to warn you that they are on the hunt for me and you. They want us as pets, and so that we can protect them, seeing as we are indestructible, only we can kill each other, she said, looking extremely sad. Oh crap. There was a vampire the other day that tried to take me. I thought he was just looking for a human girl, I said, getting worried. There are vampires in Forks? She asked me, bewildered. Yes, and one happens to have fallen in love with me, I said, still fairly cold. I have missed Emilia so much, and now, when she finally comes back, she gives me bad news. What? But, surely, he thinks you are a human, she asked, looking shocked. Up until a few hours ago, yes. Oh, and, his name is Edward Cullen. I believe you met his father, Carlisle Cullen? I asked her, and she looked surprised. Carlisle's here, she said, excited. Yeah, and he knows quite a lot about us. Wonder who told him that, I said, looking at her angrily. Yes, because he is the only vampire I can trust. He won't ever drink human blood. He tries to help others. You have to let me see him, she demanded. Who is she to demand things from me? Yeah, did you know, he is now a doctor. He has made himself immune to the smell of human blood. He can resist it. Anyway, why are you so desperate to see him? I asked, adding coldness back into my voice. Because he can help us, Isabella, she said, firmly. By the way, my name is Bella. I said to her. I tried to call you Bella once but you hated it, she said, looking sad. Well, things have changed, I said, walking out of the back door, not waiting for her to catch up. As soon as we were out in the forest, I started flying. I heard Emilia behind me also start flying. Once I was in the air, I felt so carefree and happy. I kept looking down to see all the trees race past me. I was just in the treetops, so every now and then I would have to swerve to avoid crashing. I didn't mind though, it was too much fun. We arrived at the Cullens' house much too quickly for my liking. We softly landed, and walked up to the big front door. I knocked only once, knowing that they would hear I was here. They could probably already hear my heavy breathing, as I was nervous about showing them Emilia. They would probably think I was horrible to her, but they didn't know what had happened. Hey Bella. Who's this? Alice asked, looking from me to Emilia. I'm Emilia. Emilia didn't know how to finish it. I don't blame her, we're not related, and we're not friends. But closer than acquaintances, sort of. Come in, I take it you want to see Carlisle? Alice asked her, rather politely. Yes, if that would be possible, Emilia said, and Alice gestured for us to come inside. Emilia? Carlisle inquired, as he walked over to us. Yep, that's me, she said, pulling him into a tight hug. What are you doing here? I haven't seen you in what, a century? Carlyle said, obviously happy to see her. I wonder why, Emilia never told me their connection. I know, we really should be in touch more, Emilia said, still hugging him. Everyone was looking at them questioningly, and even some of them were looking at me and asking what is going on. I don't know, I know as little as them. Yeah, we will. Everyone, I believe I should explain who exactly Emilia is. But first, Emilia, this is my family. My lovely wife Esme, and our adoptive children Edward, Alice and Jasper who are together, and Emmett and Rosalie, who are also together, he said, pointing them all out to her. Right, Edward, I believe you are a mind reader, are you not? She asked him, and he looked shocked. How did you know? He asked, bewildered. Much like Isabella, I am a mind shield, and I can see your face scrunching up as you try to read my mind. She said, smiling to him. All he said was, oh. Alice, I'm guessing you have visions of the future? I think you saw me and Isabella coming. Then Jasper, you are an empathy, you read emotions. You were so excited when I saw Carlyle, so I'm guessing that was my excitement, she asked, and they both nodded. They all stood there, shocked. I wasn't shocked at all, she had taught me how to do the exact same, but I wasn't quite as good as her yet. So, if everyone would like to take a seat, then I will explain all I know about Emilia. Carlyle said, breaking everyone from their thoughts. We all went and sat in the living room, everyone awaiting Carlyle's words. Well, in my human years, I had a sister. My father never liked her, and since my mother wasn't around, she was underfed and not looked after. After my father died, I took care of my sister. However, as soon as she turned 20, she left, as she didn't like my vampire hunting ways. She said they were real people, who deserved to be treated better. Once I was changed to a vampire. I forgot all about my sister. I remembered my father, but for some reason, my sister vanished from my mind. It was not until 80 years later when I went back to my hometown did I remember. No one had lived in our house, since they thought vampires would come for them. Everything was like I remembered. I was walking around when I saw a picture of me, my father and a girl. Instantly, I recognized her as my sister, and was deeply upset. I realized that by now she was most likely dead, and I had forgotten all about her. I went to the graveyard, to see if she had been buried. It was the least I could do. I looked around, and found her grave. My heart broke at the thought of my lost sister. However, upon reading the tombstone, it said her body was never found. It may seem stupid, but a part of me thought that maybe she had become a vampire also. I had new hope, so I spent the next few years searching for her. Eventually, I went back to my old house once more. Apparently someone had moved in there, so I knocked on the door to ask if I could look around. I was shocked when the door opened, and on the other side was my sister. She instantly recognized me, and we spent hours talking, and about how she was a half-fairy, half-human, who was changed almost instantly after she left. I told her about me being a vampire, and she said she already knew, and had followed me for years. She never said anything because she was afraid I wouldn't remember her, or hate her. But, I was happy, and we spent time together. However, we went our separate ways, after she met Matthew, a shapeshifter. I was saddened, but I moved on, and created my own family. Now, I can see you again, Carlyle finished. This explained a lot of things, but I still had questions. Emilia, why did you never tell me Carlyle was your brother? I asked, shocked she wouldn't tell me. I don't know. Carlyle was polite about the way we separated, but it was much worse. I basically left him all alone just so I could run off with my boyfriend. Emilia said, and that sounded very similar. Out of curiosity, are you still with Matthew? Carlyle asked, and Emilia shyly nodded. He told me I was being selfish, and that he was too. I tried for years to find you, and you Isabella, but I couldn't. He is here now, if you want to meet him, she asked, still seeming nervous. Yes, that would be lovely, Carlyle said, as Emilia went outside. She returned a few minutes later with a tall man, with curly brown hair. He was taller than her, and was pretty handsome. He had vivid purple eyes, and had muscles that were just noticeable under his tight t-shirt. He looked at Emilia with clear love in his eyes. Hey, you must be Isabella or Bella, I have heard so much about you, he said, smiling at me. Definitely Emilia's type. I presume you are Matthew, and I have heard absolutely nothing about you, I said, trying to lighten the tension. Jasper was doing the same, only his method was more effective. Whoa, I just got a wave of calm, Matthew said, looking completely amused. Amelia quickly whispered to him about the vampire's powers, and he nodded his head. What can you turn into? Emmett said, looking at Matthew with admiration. Anything you want, he said, looking proud. A bear, Emmett shouted, and Matthew focused on something, while his body began to change. In less than a second, he was a bear. Now a deer, Emmett shouted. This continued for the next half an hour, until Rosalie told him to stop. He looked sad. Carlisle, how come you never told us you had a sister? Rosalie asked, speaking for the first time to him. Well, that's my fault, really. I'm presuming you all know me and Isabella are half fairies, so I asked him not to mention me for fear of us becoming common knowledge, especially with the Volturi, Amelia replied. You know about the Volturi? Rosalie asked, looking slightly shocked. Yes, that's actually the main reason I came to visit you, Carlisle. You see, I met Arrow a few decades ago, and he knew I wasn't a human, but I wouldn't tell him what I was. His mind tricks don't work on me, the same as with Isabella. Well, he decided he wanted me as part of his Volturi, to show off if you like. I politely declined, so he tried to take me forcefully. I obviously won the fight, seeing as the only thing that matches mine and Isabella's strength is each other. However, Arrow was still unhappy, so he took Matthew. He tortured him, seeing as the mind tricks worked on him. He used this to get information out of me, and I'm ashamed to say it worked. I told him about Isabella, and that we were half fairies. After that, he said me and Matthew would be free. But Arrow is still hunting for us, and I was scared he would get to Isabella, so I came to warn her, Amelia said, breaking down into tears at the end. Matthew comforted her by hugging her tightly. You have nothing to be ashamed about, Amelia. Anyone in your position is likely to have done the same. I have met Arrow before, so I'm sure if I have a word with him, and tell him you are my sister and Bella is a very close family friend, he shall leave you alone, Carlisle said, before walking to his study. I presume he was going to call Arrow now. Amelia looked slightly relieved. Thank you so much, Carlisle. Isabella, if you want, I can leave right away, Amelia half asked, half stated. No, I think you should stay. You can't leave Carlisle again, I said, and part of me also wanted her to stay for me, as well. Thank you, so much. I am ever so sorry for all I have put you through, Isabella, she said, and my eyes brimmed with tears. You don't have to be sorry, like Carlisle said. Anyone would have done the same, I said, walking over and hugging her. She seemed shocked by my action, but still reciprocated it. Oh, Isabella, I have missed you so much, she squealed, and I could feel her tears dripping on my shoulders. Then I heard Carlisle dialing the number, and we all went silent so that we could listen. Hello, Carlisle, to what do I owe the pleasure? I heard who I presumed was Arrow ask. I need to have a word with you about Amelia Jenkins, Carlisle replied, in a very formal and serious tone of voice. How do you know about her? Arrow asked, and he sounded as though he was beginning to get worried. Because she is my sister, Arrow. Not adoptive or anything, she is my birth sister. So I would appreciate it if you left her and Isabella Swan alone, he said, his tone very firm. I presume you know they are half fairies? Arrow asked, rather stupidly, to be honest. Yes, of course I do. So, will you leave them alone? Carlisle asked. If you insist, but I do not plan on harming them, Arrow said, again, rather stupidly as we couldn't be harmed by vampires. What do you plan on doing with them? Carlisle asked. Seeing what abilities they have that differ from vampires, and just finding out more about them, Arrow said, trying to sound not sad about not being able to steal us. We weren't objects. If they wanted you to know, they would tell you. If I hear any news of you trying to take or harm my sister or Isabella in any way, there will be consequences. I am not threatening you, just politely reminding you. That is all for now, Arrow, Carlisle said, and his tone was firm again. Okay, goodbye, Carlisle, Arrow said, sounding slightly annoyed. Goodbye, Arrow, Carlisle finished, then ended the call. I presume you lot were listening in? Carlisle asked, and everyone looked at each other. Well, I don't mind seeing as now I don't have to tell you what happened, Carlisle said, and everyone began laughing. Bella, so, Matthew, tell me about yourself, I said, while I walked over and sat next to him. Everyone was getting to know everyone, seeing as Amelia and Matthew were going to stay for a bit and go to Forks High School. Well, what do you want to know? Matthew replied. Like, favorite color, any family, what abilities you have, stuff like that. I said, wanting to know more about him even though I had my book with facts. Well, my favorite color is orange, and my family is Amelia, then I have two shape-shifting brothers, who both have partners. My abilities are shape-shifting, duh. I punched him at this point, and I am immortal, don't have to sleep, yada yada yada, he said, looking kind of bored at my question. Hey, are you bored at my question? I said, mocking hurt. Well, it's not like you don't know all this stuff already, he said, playing along. I don't actually know all that stuff, I said to him. Yes you do, Amelia said, he replied, looking smug. I didn't know your favorite color was purple, or that you have two shape-shifting brothers who have partners, I said, and now it was my turn to look smug. Oh, whatever, I should have known you would be like this. Amelia has told me so many times, he said, and I was shocked that Amelia talked about me. Amelia told you about me? I asked, feeling my eyes brim with tears again. Yeah, why? Oh, yeah, right, he said, and things got a bit awkward. So, when do I get to meet your family then? I asked, and we both laughed at my question that I only asked to break the tension. Whenever you want, he sort of asked, sort of stated. So, I could meet them right now? I asked, trying to be smug again. With a smug grin, he replied. Yep, just give me a minute. With that said, he ran out the door. Amelia looked out, slightly worried, but I gave her a reassuring smile. Then I saw Alice smile, and realized she must have had a vision of Matthew's two brothers being introduced to us. Edward also smiled, as he must have seen the vision too. Everyone, I would like to make an announcement. These four people here are my two brothers, and their wives. This here is my older brother Darren and his wife Harriet, and next to them are my younger brother Sebastian and his wife Catherine. He said, pointing to the four people standing by the doorway. Darren looked very similar to Matthew. He was slightly taller, and had slightly larger muscles. He had the same curly brown hair, and vivid purple eyes. His wife, Harriet, was incredibly beautiful. She had long, straight brown hair, which ended around her waist. She also had purple eyes, showing that she too was a shapeshifter. Next to them too were Sebastian and Catherine. Sebastian had black, curly hair, which was very similar to his brothers. He was noticeably shorter than them, and looked younger than them in appearance. He of course had the same bright purple eyes. His wife Catherine was just as beautiful as Harriet. Catherine had blonde hair, which reached just below her shoulders. It was very curly, but suited her. She had yellow eyes, which matched the shade of her hair. It is a pleasure to meet you all, Carlyle said warmly. Yes, do come into the living room, we should have enough seats, Esme said in her motherly tone, and hugged everyone as they walked into the living room. Everyone just about fit in, but Alice and Jasper had to sit on the floor. So, do you guys all travel round together, kinda like our coven? Alice asked, seeming curious at the newcomers. Yeah, we all consider ourselves a family. We go around and go to high school together, Darren answered politely. How long have you been together as a family? Alice asked again. About 70 years now. Me and my brothers all changed to shapeshifters around the same time, which is why I am younger than them, as I was when I was a human. Sebastian answered this time. So, in the politest way possible. What are you, Catherine? I am guessing the rest of you are shapeshifters, seeing as you have the same purple eye color. Carlyle said, obviously interested in his newfound family. I am a witch. I can practice magic and such, Catherine replied, smiling brightly. If you would like, you can stay with us for a bit. My children all attend the local high school. I'm sure it would be easy for you to join. I am sure Carlyle would love to spend time getting to know his new family, Esme said, overjoyed at the thought of having more family and children. We would love to. You mentioned children though, Darren said, not finishing. Oh, well, they are technically only my adoptive children, but I consider them my real children, Esme said, her motherly nature showing through. Okay, so, what could we say we are doing here? Amelia asked. Well, you could say that you are our cousins, who are visiting for a while, Carlyle offered. Okay, how long do you want us to stay for? Matthew asked, speaking for the first time since the arrival of his brothers. However long you want. Carlyle said, while smiling a warm smile. I think you will be staying for a very long time, Alice said, evidently looking into the future to see how long they stayed for. We all sat down and talked, while Carlyle rang up the school and asked if they could let their 6 cousins attend for the next few weeks. They happily obliged, and we were all relieved. I was looking forward to spending more time with Amelia, although there were still some issues. Okay, so what are everyone's living arrangements going to be? Alice squealed, liking the idea of more company. Well, at my house I have got 3 spare bedrooms if anyone wants to stay at mine, I said, looking forward to the new company I would hopefully be having. Okay, so how about you, Amelia, Matthew, and Edward for the moment stay at yours? Alice asked, and quickly winked while Edward wasn't looking. I rolled my eyes in response. Okay, is everyone good with that? I asked, making sure I wasn't upsetting anyone. I heard a chorus of yes, so I made my way to my Chevy. I think I need a new car, I mumbled, more to myself than anyone else. I forgot they would all be able to hear me. It's okay, me and Matthew will ride in my Volvo, and you and Amelia can ride in your Chevy. Edward sighed. I nodded in agreement, and me and Amelia hopped in. So, what did you think of my family then? Amelia asked me. They all seem very nice, and they are all breathtakingly beautiful, I said, to which we laughed. Your family seems nice, she mumbled, doing the same as I had previously done. They're not my family, but Carlyle did offer, I said, now thinking more than ever to join them. And you said no? Amelia asked, looking shocked. No, I haven't actually answered yet, I said back. But, she said, egging me to carry on. I think I would like to, but now that you're back and Rosalie told me Edward was in love with me, I said, shocked at how easy it was to talk to her considering a few hours ago I slammed a door in her face. Weird. Oh my god. Really, Isabella? You know about vampires and love, it's in the book. Actually, do you still have the book? That's a stupid question. You probably don't. I wouldn't blame you. Anyway, who's saying you can't join the Cullen clan and still be with me and my clan? She said, all in one breath, and rather quickly. Whoa, of course I still have the book. I read it all the time. What do you mean be with your clan and the Cullen clan, as you called them? How is that possible? I asked, confused as to how I could be part of 2 clans. Wow, that's so amazing, duh. Do you really not see how? We can be one big clan. I'm pretty sure Alice saw it in a vision, and so did Edward because he certainly perked up. Amelia squealed. She sounded a lot like Alice. They would really get on well. Really? But that would make, like, 14 of us? I don't think the Volturi would be too happy with that. I said, worried in case someone got injured because of me. Firstly, the Volturi can't get angry or declare war on us, because we aren't purely vampires, so we wouldn't have a vampire coven that was nearly as big of them, because we would be a supernatural mix of awesomeness coven or clan or whatever. And secondly, there wouldn't be 14 of us, there would be 15, she said, with a big grin on her face. No, there would be 14, me, you, Edward, Matthew, Alice, Jasper, Rosalie, Emmett, Esme, Carlyle, Darren, Harriet, Sebastian and Catherine. I said, mentally checking I hadn't forgotten anyone. Actually, there would be 15, because I, am kind of pregnant, she said, screaming at the end of her announcement. You're what? Buddha thought we couldn't get pregnant, I said, all in one, mashed together. I didn't think we could either, but I am, which means my baby will be half shape-shifter, a quarter human and a quarter fairy, she said, and I couldn't remember ever seeing her so happy. Oh my god, I'm so happy for you, I said, well shouted, and my words were merged together again. Thank you, you're going to be an aunt, she squealed, happy that I was happy, that she was happy, 'cause that isn't confusing. We arrived at my house, and I was still on cloud 9. I wasn't likely to return anytime soon, either. I joyfully skipped towards the front door, towards a goofily grinning Matthew, who had probably heard our conversation, and a bemused-looking Edward, who had probably heard our conversation about me knowing that he likes me because of Rosalie. Hey, you didn't have to wait for us, you know, I said, giving an extra big smile to Edward, which he seemed to like. It's seen as rude to break into a person's house, you know, Edward sighed, still looking bemused. I unlocked the door, and everyone went in. I showed them to the bedrooms, but they weren't really going to use them, seeing as none of us needed to sleep. Right, me and Matthew are going to go out shopping tonight, before school. We will be back later, Amelia said, pulling Matthew out of the doorway. She gave me a look that said you can thank me later, so I just glared at her. So you have a lovely home, Edward commented, looking around. Thank you, I awkwardly replied. This was more awkward than I thought it would be, but luckily, Amelia and Matthew weren't here to listen in. Maybe I will thank Amelia later. I'm sorry about before, Edward sighed, which confused me. What happened before? I asked him. When you came over to my house because I forced you, and how I was rude to you for not telling us what you were. And how I shouted, he said, looking thoroughly ashamed. You don't have to be sorry, I was being an idiot not telling you what I was. I would have done the same in your position, I said softly, realizing how stupid I had been. No, I understand why you wanted to hide, but just to let you know, I'm sure Carlisle would love if you and Amelia's clan joined our coven, he said, and I couldn't stop my response. He would be the only one, I said, smiling smugly at Edward. Who else who be, happy? He asked, getting all nervous. Well, Rosalie said when she found out what I was that she would love for me to join with you guys. And I'm sure Alice would too, you know, I said, laughing as his expression went calm again. What are you laughing at? He said, stepping closer to me. Nothing, I said, trying to contain the laughter. You can tell me, he said, coming closer. Damn, he was good at playing this game. Just your expression when you got scared then relieved, I said, staring into his eyes, they were really pretty. What do you mean scared? He asked, trying to seem nonchalant. When I said Carlisle wouldn't be the only one who would be happy for me to join him, I said, not really caring about the conversation, just taking him in. Oh, right, he said, attempting to shrug it off. Well, I'm hungry. Care to fetch some food with me? I asked, signaling to go outside. He nodded, and so we walked out the back door and into the forest. I had grabbed my basket, and had begun filling it with leaves and berries that I found. Edward, I called out, as he seemed to have run off somewhere. What? He called down from one of the trees. Wait there is something I want to show you, I said back, slightly louder than my normal voice, but not shouting because I knew he would be able to hear me. Okay, he replied. Slowly, I took off from the ground, and began flying up towards him. I heard him sharply take in a breath when he saw me approaching. Bella, you can fly? He asked, sounding shocked by his own words. Yeah, of course, I am part fairy, I simply replied, while hovering beside him. I stayed there for a while, before sitting next to Edward on the branch. I put the basket down next to me, and began eating some of the leaves. It's a really beautiful view up here, I said, in awe of the surroundings. I always chose a town where there was a forest, because it meant I could sit up and just look down on everything. I saw Edward turn and face me. I've got an even better view right in front of me, Edward sighed, and I turned to face him. He was so sweet, my heart melted. Have you seen the other view? I said, still shocked by his words. Yes, it most definitely does not compare to your beauty, he said, gazing into my eyes. I returned his gaze, and he sat there for ages. Then, very slowly, he leaned across to me, and his lips were on mine. Bella. Wow, I gasped, as mine and Edward's kiss came to an end. I'm sorry, if you, didn't want to kiss, and I, kinda just started kissing you, and, Edward mumbled. Shut up, I laughed, as he worried about the kiss. It's fine, I enjoyed it, I said, pecking him on the lips to show him I meant it. He smiled back at me, and we decided it was probably time to go back down. Race you, I screamed, as I was speedily flying back to the ground. I saw him flash by as he was climbing down the tree trunk. We were about 30 feet from the ground and we were almost even. But then, he let go of the branch and jumped to the ground. Cheat! I shouted to him, as he made a loud bang when he made impact with the ground. I gracefully landed next to him, who was now lying on the floor laughing. You didn't say anything about jumping, he said, smiling smugly. Least my landing was a bit more graceful and quieter, I said, nudging him to get up. Yes, but you left your basket at the top, he said, laughing as he saw my annoyed expression, before I shot up into the air. How can you fly so fast? Edward asked, sounding shocked. I just laughed, and continued my ascent before I got up to where we had previously been sitting. I grabbed the basket, and shot back down again. Edward was still looking at me, shocked by something. What? I asked, trying to get him to snap out of it. No, nothing, he said, but it was obvious there was something wrong. Edward, tell me. Was it something to do with werewolves again? I asked, saying werewolves quickly and quietly. How did you know about that? Edward asked, still shocked. I don't really know what happened, but I smelt them on you. Anyway, let's go back to mine and you can tell me what happened, I said, tugging on Edward's arm. We both ran at full speed back to my house, and I was relieved that Amelia and Matthew were still out. So, what happened then? I asked, as soon as we were in the living room. Flashback. Edward, you have to help, man. Rosalie isn't here, I heard Emmett Think scream as I walked into the cafeteria. Look, Emmett, I'm sure she's fine. Alice hasn't had any bad visions. Her class was probably just let out late, I said to Emmett, trying to calm him down. I'm going to go look for her, he announced, just as Rosalie walked through the doors. In her head, she was singing a song to block me out. I wonder why? Lunch was normal after that, aside from the fact that Bella wasn't here. That worried me a bit, but I didn't want to tell my family because they would just laugh and say I was in love with her. Although, I'm pretty sure deep down I knew I loved her. Suddenly, my head was filled with Alice's vision. Me and her were in the woods, facing 5 werewolves. Then, Bella was in the middle of us. Suddenly, Bella disappeared, and the vision ended. What does this mean, Alice? I asked quickly and quietly, getting worried. It means we need to go to the forest. The vision was incredibly uncertain. Don't bring the others, Alice thought to me, and I subtly nodded and ran out the door with Alice, before the others could process what was happening, but still at human speed. I heard some of the humans' thoughts from the cafeteria. What happened? Everything seemed calm at their table, like normal. I wonder where they are going. Maybe I should follow. Edward, what the hell are you and Alice doing, you idiot? I heard Emmett Think scream at me. I just ignored him and kept running with Alice to the forest. Once we got there, I started smelling disgusting dog, and knew we were on the right track. Like in the vision, there were 5 werewolves, all facing us, but no sign of Bella. I couldn't smell her, but maybe her scent was covered by the werewolves. We knew you would turn up, Edward. I heard Jacob think, so I quickly told Alice what he said before responding to them. So we're not the only family to have a physic then? I responding sarcastically. Cut the crap, Edward. Jacob thought spat at me. What do you and your pack want? I said, realizing they tricked us with their plan of Bella. Your coven and that Isabella girl are getting too close. We are concerned for her well-being. We don't want her becoming a vampire. You know the treaty. Here's our warning. Stay away from her. Sam thought, a little more politely than Jacob. Look, you don't need to worry about Bella. She isn't human, and is probably much stronger than us, so we can't harm her, Alice said, speaking up for the first time. I had almost forgotten she was here. You are lying, Sam. They are lying, so we won't stop them changing her. Then it will be too late, Jacob shouted, and I told Alice what he had said. Then, I saw in Alice's vision Jacob lunging at me. Then, in real life, he did the exact same thing, but I was prepared. I threw him back against the tree, and he met it with a loud crash. Right now, I didn't care if people heard. Jacob, what the hell was that? You had no reason to attack him, Sam thought shouted at Jacob. He is going to hurt her, don't you want to stop him and them? Jacob shouted back. Yes, but I think we should leave now, since it was an unprovoked attack. I'm deeply sorry, Sam said, and I nodded to him in acknowledgement. Me and Alice then left the forest, and were met by practically the entire school, watching us. Crap. End of flashback. So, that's pretty much what happened. Edward finished, after he told me the whole story. Okay, so, I think I should go tell them I'm not a human then. Save worry, I said, trying to make sure there wouldn't be any more accidents. Don't feel like you are being forced into anything though, Edward sighed, sounding genuinely concerned. No, I don't want your family being disrupted because of me, and I was cut off. Hey guys, oh, crap, did I just interrupt a private moment? Amelia said, making me laugh. No, don't worry, nothing private here, I said, and I saw Edward grinning at me sheepishly. Amelia then spent the next what seemed like centuries showing me and Edward all the clothes and supplies for school her and Matthew had bought. If I could have, I would have definitely fallen asleep. Shame. They had even bought Edward a gift of a new shirt, and me a new bracelet with charms on it, It was really lovely, so I put it on straight away. Okay, enough talking, we need to start getting ready. School starts in a couple of hours, Amelia squealed, reminding me instantly of Alice. You know, you really remind of my sister Alice. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to cope with both of you, Edward sighed, and everyone started laughing, apart from Amelia who tried to look angry. Unfortunately, this failed, and she ended up laughing with the rest of us. We all went to our separate rooms, and prepared for school that day. I put on some dark skinny jeans and a purple top. I grabbed my bag, and made sure I had all my books in there that I needed for the day. When I went downstairs, the sun was beginning to rise, and Amelia was sat at the table eating some leaves and fruit. I wasn't particularly hungry, so I just sat at the table and talked to her. Looking forward to school? I asked. You're going to think I'm sad, but yes, I haven't been to school in about 50 years due to searching for you, she replied, looking genuinely excited. Well, you may not be so happy when you meet some of the people, I said, messing with her. We later decided that since they were meant to be Edward's cousins, Matthew and Amelia would fly back to the Cullen house, and I would make my way to school on my own, as per usual. They left, and said they would text me when they set off for school. That way, I could arrive just after them, and go straight over to them. Once they left, I just wandered around the house, until I got the text. I jumped when there was a knock on my door. Maybe someone forgot something. I slowly walked to the door, and apprehensively opened it. Hey, I'm Sam, and this is Quill, Embry, Paul and Jacob. We heard you moved to town fairly recently, and we live at the reservation, so we came to greet you, Sam said, and I could smell he was a werewolf. And him and the 5 others coincidentally, they all had the same names. Well, hey, I said, not too sure what they wanted. Do you mind if we come in? Sam asked me, and I was a little nervous. There was obviously something they wanted to talk to me about. Yeah, sure, I said, moving aside so they could come in. I guided them to the living room, and gestured for them to sit down. Edward would not be happy with the smell. We need to speak to you, Bella, Paul said, speaking for the first time. What about? I asked, wanting to get this over with. You're not worried we knew your name? Paul asked, seeming genuinely curious. No, because I know you're werewolves, I said bluntly. They all looked shocked, apart from Jacob, who looked angry, who rocked his boat. That filthy bloodsucker told you, didn't he? Jacob shouted at me. How dare you call him that? And no, he didn't tell me, I can smell it, I shouted back. What do you mean, smell it? Are you one too? Jacob shouted back, getting nervous towards the end. No, but I'm not human either, I responded. They all looked at me, shocked. This wasn't the way I wanted to tell them, but they left me no choice. What are you then? Embry asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. I don't and can't tell you, because I have the Volturi looking for me. Now, I appreciate your protection for me, but I am about 10 times stronger than you and vampires, so I am more than capable of handling myself. I hate to be rude, but I need to get to school now. If you really want, I can speak to you more once school is over, but right now isn't a good time, I said in a calm and convincing tone. They all nodded, apart from Jacob, to me, and made their way out of my house. I got in my van, and checked my phone to see 3 missed calls and 7 unread messages. Hey Bella, we are heading to school now, okay? Edward. Did you get my last text? We are on our way to school now, Edward? Hey, we are at school now, where are you, Edward? Bella, I'm worried, why aren't you at school, Edward? Your future is gone, please tell me you are safe, Edward. Alice had a vision in which you died, please tell me you are safe, Edward. I'm coming over to your house. Edward. Surprise, surprise, all the missed calls were from Edward. I quickly sent him a text back, saying that I was all right and would explain what happened at school. I hoped he would get it before he came running to my house, but this is Edward here. Luckily, he texted back saying okay, so I quickly drove to school. I might just be able to make it on time, that is if there weren't any other interferences. I got to school just as bell rang, and saw Edward pacing nervously by the side of his car. I apprehensively walked over to him, scared as to what his reaction might be. What happened? Alice saw you dying, and by werewolves, Edward sighed, speaking quietly but angrily. Look, they came round to warn me away from you, So I told them that I knew you are a vampire, that I know they are werewolves, and that I am not human. But I didn't tell them what I was. Then that Jacob dude flipped and got angry. That's it, I didn't die. I said, almost sarcastically. I'm sorry, I just got a bit worried. Although, right now I do feel murderous towards Jacob. Edward sighed, lightly chuckling. Same here, but I think I'm more likely to win that fight, I said, gently nudging him. We began walking to my first class, which was English. Edward left when we got there to go to his own class, so I was left with the screaming Alice and Amelia. Great. Oh my God, Bella, you could have been dead. You should have been dead, Alice screamed at me, almost making me deaf. Alice, calm down. Now, how many times do I have to tell you only Amelia can kill me, okay? And since she was with you, I don't see that happening anytime soon, I said, smiling at her. Yeah, but I saw it happen, Alice protested, trying to not be proven that she was making a mountain out of a molehill. Okay, but I just want you to remember for next time, that unless Amelia is involved, I can't be killed, I said to her slowly and softly. Hey, I'm not planning on killing you anytime soon, you realize? Amelia asked, sounding outraged. I just rolled my eyes, as we walked into English. Amelia and Alice came to sit at the back with me, and it felt nice to have company around. However, they spent the entire time talking about clothes, shopping and all the new things coming out. Great, now I have two fashionistas to deal with like one isn't enough. All through the day, if I walked down the corridor with one of Amelia's family, I would be met with staring eyes. I suppose it did look a little suspicious, but constantly staring? Come on now, guys. At lunch, all of us squeezed around one table. Not such a good idea, as practically everyone in the cafeteria were staring at us. I would have liked to have shouted at them, but that probably would have raised suspicion. Also, with all the staring, it made it harder for the vampires to only pretend to eat food. We were all heavily thankful when the bell rang, and me and Edward slowly walked to biology together. Happily, it was still just me and Edward in biology, none of the newcomers. I was happy with this, as it would give me and Edward some much-needed time alone. I mean, I had millions of questions I wanted to ask him. First things first, what were his feelings for me? So, what's going on with us? I asked, in the worst way ever. It was like one of those really cheesy films. I really like you, Bella. Edward sighed, looking as though he wanted to say more, but holding back. I have heard about people like you, and that they don't go around liking lots of people, I sort of stated, not really finishing what I was saying. I hoped he got the message that I knew about vampires and singers. Oh, damn, I forgot you knew about us and our singers, he said back, looking as though if he could he would have blushed. Yep, so, are you saying you think that I'm your singer? I asked, worried in case he thought I was jumping to conclusions. Yes, Bella Swan, I believe you are my singer. Bella? Whoa, oh my God, I'm your what? Are you sure? I asked, completely bewildered. He was lying, he had to be. You are my singer. I am 100% certain of this. Edward sighed, smiling his crooked smile at me. Oh wow, if we weren't in the middle of a lesson right now, I would totally kiss you, I said, smiling stupidly at Edward. Damn biology. We can wait, we have forever, he replied, making my heart melt. Why was he so sweet? The hour of biology seemed to go ridiculously slow, making me want to kiss Edward even more. Why did I have to find out in a biology lesson that I was his singer, when I would have to wait to show him I felt the same? All through the lesson I felt him staring at me, and occasionally I would return his gaze. During that lesson, I didn't take in any information, but it doesn't matter seeing as I know it already. When the bell signaled the end of the lesson, Edward took my hand and walked me to my next lesson. We walked in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. As we got to my classroom, Edward placed a small kiss on my lips and walked off. I gasped in surprise, and smiled when everyone looked at me. Obviously not everyone had heard about us. OMG, since when did you and Edward Cullen start dating? Jessica Stanley practically screamed at me in the gym changing rooms. I dunno, nothing has actually officially said, I said, realizing Edward had never actually said about dating me, or anything like that. But he just kissed you, Jessica screeched, and I was relieved when Alice walked through the door along with Catherine and Harriet. I shot her a rescue me look, and she smiled back happily, like always. Everyone, I would like to introduce Catherine and Harriet, my cousins, Alice said, and Catherine and Harriet smiled and waved saying, "Hello." Alice walked over to me and began talking to me. "What was Jessica saying?" Alice asked, keeping her voice low. Outside the gym hall Edward kind of kissed me, and she saw, and then asked if we were dating, and I said kind of but kind of not, and stuff, I replied, my voice equally low. "What? You kissed for the first time outside the gym room?" Alice screeched in my ear. I forgot that no one knew about our treetop kiss. I suppose I better tell her. Shush. Not really. The other day I was out picking fruit and leaves, and we climbed a tree, and, kissed, I said, feeling my cheeks warm up rapidly. OMG. That's so sweet, Alice squealed, looking genuinely excited. She then decided to fill in Catherine and Harriet about me and Edward, which caused me to blush more. "I see the way he looks at you, and it is of pure love and adoration," Catherine said, seeming happy for me. "Yeah, I definitely agree, when others are around he only focuses on you," Harriet added. We all quickly got changed, and walked into the gym hall. I saw the nets up, and instantly became worried as it looked like we would be playing volleyball. I feel sorry for whoever has to be on my team. Actually, if they are on the same team, they are slightly less likely to get hit, but there is definitely still a possibility. "Why do you look so worried?" Harriet curiously asked me. "I have a tendency to injure me or someone else when playing any sort of sport," I said, admitting my fears. I could see Harriet trying to hold back laughter. "Seriously, you'll be fine," she replied, letting out her laughing. "Hey, you haven't seen me play sports before. Be afraid, be very afraid," I said, nudging her gently. We walked over to the net, where Coach Clapp was waiting for everyone. "Right, we're going to be playing volleyball today, as most of you will have guessed. Split yourself up into 2 teams," Coach Clapp shouted to us. Quickly, everyone separated into 2 teams, and I made sure I was with Alice, Harriet and Catherine. We went to our side of the net, and everyone spread out. I made sure I went in the corner at the back, so that I would be able to stay out of the way and not injure anyone. My plan worked for a bit, until, the ball came my way. Out of shock, I put my hands up and tried to hit it in the right direction. However, it sort of went sideways, and I somehow managed to hit Alice. "OMG. Alice, I'm so sorry," I shouted across the room to her. She just shrugged and smiled, and returned to the game. When the bell eventually rang, I was so relieved, as it meant it was the end of the day. We all rushed to the changing rooms, and quickly got change. "I'm so sorry about hitting you," I said, apologizing to Alice again. I know it wouldn't have physically hurt her, but I still felt bad. "Bella, do you really think a plastic ball can hurt me?" Alice said, laughing at the end. "No, but I still feel bad," I said, and she just shook her head. We walked out of the changing rooms with Harriet and Catherine, and made our way to our cars. "Hey," Edward Said, walking over to me. "Hey," I said back, feeling a big smile form on my face. I was happy to see him. "How is Jim?" he asked, with a slight smirk on his face. "Terrible, I hit Alice," I said, still feeling bad. However, he just laughed at me. I playfully punched him in the arm. "Am I driving to my house or your house?" I asked, ignoring his laughing. "Can you go to your house? There are a couple of things Amelia needs to pick up. I spoke to her before," Edward Said. "Okay, if I meet you there then?" I asked, and he nodded, so I walked to my car. I decided to set off ahead of them, because my Chevy was considerably slower. All the Cullens still weren't there yet, which meant I would get a bigger head start. I pulled into my drive, and saw no sign of any Cullen cars, and smiled, proud of beating Edward. But then, I smelled a scent coming from my house that was familiar. I slowly walked towards my house, and found my door unlocked. How would anyone get in? I opened the door, and heard 2 people turn their heads. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" I shouted, as I saw 2 vampires, with blood-red eyes, sitting on my couch. Neither of them answered, so I shouted again. "Get out," I screamed, yet they didn't move, so I quickly grabbed both of them by their heads, in a tight hold so they couldn't escape. Well, that got them talking. "Put me down," the girl screeched, so I just laughed. "Maybe you shouldn't break into people's houses, then I wouldn't have to grab you," I angrily said in her ear. "Why did you decide to break into my house anyway? What have I ever done to you?" I asked both of them, my tone still harsh. "Oh, don't you remember me?" the man said, and it suddenly hit me. He was the vampire who tried to attack me on my walk home from the hospital. Oh, so that's why. You wanted to get even with me because I beat you last time, I said, waiting for his reaction. No, that's not the reason, actually. When you attacked me, I was curious to find there was a new vampire in the area that I hadn't heard of, he replied. Well, sorry to ruin it for you, but I'm not a vampire, I said, laughing as he gasped in shock. Don't lie, idiot, you are as strong as a vampire, you had to be one, he said, laughing as he thought he knew me. Actually, I'm stronger than a vampire, I said, squeezing him and the girl tighter to show him. Do something, the girl shouted, obviously at the man. There isn't anything stronger than a vampire. A werewolf has about equal strength, but only in werewolf form, and you don't smell like a werewolf to me. The man replied, ignoring the girl's comment previously. For crying out loud, there aren't just vampire and werewolves in the world, there are other creatures, but I'm not going to tell you any of them, I said, getting frustrated with him. How am I supposed to believe you? He asked, sounding like a child. You sound like a child, and I'm proving it to you now seeing as I have the upper hand. Also, if you want to stay alive, then you should shut up, I said, getting annoyed with him. I couldn't kill him right away, as I didn't know if he had a big coven. But when Edward arrives, he will know what to do. Just then, Edward burst through the door, looking worried. What on earth happened? He asked, looking slightly amused as he took in the scene. I saw behind him Matthew, who looked worried, and Amelia, who was looking proud. These idiot vampires decided to break into my home, and ignore me when I asked why, so, I said, and I would have shrugged if I wasn't holding two vampires by their necks. Oh right. Edward replied, before turning towards the vampires. Now, James and Victoria, why are you breaking into Bella's house? He asked them, and I finally learnt their names. Because she says she isn't a vampire, but she can't possibly be anything else. I mean, she attacked me the other day and threw me at least 4 miles, if not more. James whined like a child. I didn't attack, I defended myself when you approached me, I said, wanting to make it sound as though I didn't go around attacking vampires. Alright, now James, what should we do with you? Edward asked him, looking right at him. James said nothing verbally, but I presumed he answered in his mind. I say we kill him, Amelia shouted out, and Matthew nodded in the back. No, I say we hand him and Victoria to the Volturi, claim they exposed vampires or something. Edward sighed, and I saw that Amelia tensed up at the mention of the Volturi, as did Matthew. Arrow would know you were lying, Victoria shouted, and she was beginning to annoy me. At that moment, Alice, Jasper, Emmett, Rosalie, Esme, Carlisle, Darren, Harriet, Sebastian and Catherine came through the door. The living room became a little crowded, and Victoria looked even more worried. What are you all doing here? Edward asked, seemingly amused at having 16 people, well, more like 16 vampires, half fairies, shapeshifters and a witch. But people is shorter and easier, crowded into my living room. Well, Alice had a vision that Bella got attacked, and in the vision no one was with her, so he came to help. Rosalie said, and I could see Emmett next to her beginning to laugh, but desperately trying to hold it in. Hate to break up the reunion, but I think it's time to let us go now, pretty girl. James said to no one in particular. What? You think I'm just going to let you go after you broke into my home? I asked James incredulously. Did he really think I would just let him go? Dad, what do you think we should do with James and Victoria? Edward asked Carlisle. Well, maybe we should just take them to South America and make them promise to not come near us again. And if they do, then we kill them, Carlisle said, being very reasonable. Ah, come on, Dad, can't we kill them? Emmett whined to his dad. Why do you so desperately want to kill them? Catherine asked curiously. Because they are so annoying, and they tried to hurt Bella, Emmett said in his whiny voice. Why don't I just put a spell on them, to make them never come near you? Catherine offered. Wow, how does that work? Emmett asked, sounding like a child being given a new toy. Well, they would realize it, but subconsciously, they won't go somewhere if you are there, Catherine replied. Okay, let's do that. Edward sighed, and Catherine walked over to me, and knelt down next to James and Victoria. They began to look worried as she pulled out a wand and pointed it towards first James's head, then Victoria's. As she did this, she was muttering words that I didn't try to work out. A few minutes later, James and Victoria appeared to be asleep. "What has happened to them?" Carlyle asked, seeming curious. "They will be in a sleep-like mode for a few hours, and when they wake up they will have no recollection of what happened, but will stay away from you," Catherine replied, while putting away her wand. "Okay, so, Emmett, Jasper, Sebastian and Darren, do you want to move them somewhere far away?" Carlyle politely asked. "Yeah, okay," Jasper replied, and him and Emmett walked over to James and Victoria, while Sebastian and Darren changed into eagles. They all left, but my living room still felt full with people. I noticed Alice and Edward, and they appeared to be having one of their silent conversations. Edward looked like he was pleading with Alice about something. I think it would be safer if you lived with us for a while, just in case," Edward half asked, half said. I looked to Alice and saw her smiling triumphantly. She was obviously persuading Edward to ask me. "Okay, let me go pack my stuff," I said, and Alice, Rosalie, Catherine, Harriet, Amelia and Esme came to join me. "So, what's going on with you and Edward then?" Rosalie asked, followed by several of the other giggling. "I dunno, he mentioned something earlier that made me think about things," I said, not actually revealing anything. However, I heard Alice start squealing loudly, and realized she must have looked into the future to see what I would later reveal. I felt my cheeks heat up as I blushed. "What?" I heard Harriet shout, and Alice looked to me, silently asking if she could tell them. "They're mates," Alice screamed out so loudly, I knew that Edward and Carlyle downstairs would have heard. Everyone in the room looked at me, asked if it was true. "Yeah, he, told me the other day, and, we, kissed," I said, being met with squeals again. If I hadn't been so embarrassed, I would probably have laughed at them. I don't think I have ever been in the situation where I have vampires, witches, shapeshifters, and a half-fairy all jumping up and down excitedly. Since there were 7 of us and we could move super fast, we were packed in less than an hour. All my possessions were packed up, and by the time we had carried everything downstairs, all the guys had returned. "We sorted out James and Victoria well," Emmett said, smiling like a child that had been given a new toy. "What did you do to them?" I asked wearily. When Emmett had that look on his face, it was never a good sign. "We left them high in a tree, so when they wake up, they will be confused and fall out," Emmett blurted out, suddenly looking scared when Rosalie walked over to him. But, instead of hitting him, she raised her hand for a high five. Emmett happily hit her hand, and everyone burst out laughing. After that, we began to load up our cars with my stuff. We decided to use cars as it may look suspicious if someone saw us running through the forest carrying a couch. It took a while to load everything up, since we had to do it at human speed. However, once we had got to the Cullens' house, it took a lot quicker to unpack my stuff. For the moment, my stuff was squashed into Edward's room, since all the other guest rooms were taken up by Amelia's family. But, Esme assured me that the men of the family were working on building a large extension to the house, which would then contain enough rooms for everyone. No one had said anything, but I think everyone secretly thought we would all stay together as a big family. I would have to ask Edward later, or Alice. Alice would be able to see if everyone would stay together. Before I had time to really process that decision, I realized too late that Alice would see my decision and come and speak to me. Ah well, least I won't have to find her. "Hey, the answer to your question is yes," Alice squealed, stepping inside Edward's room. He wasn't around, but he could probably tell what Alice was thinking. "Everyone will move in together? And together like one big family, forever?" I decided I would ask through my thoughts. Hopefully Alice would see this. "Yes," Alice said, sitting on the couch next to me. "So, have you been getting on with everyone?" I asked Alice, feeling in the mood for conversation. "Yeah, I love Catherine, Harriet and Amelia. Especially Harriet, she likes shopping," Alice said, looking genuinely happy. Then I had a thought, does she ever not look happy? "Alice, Bella, come down here," I heard Edward's voice say, and me and Alice ran downstairs at full speed. I gave a little laugh when I beat Alice downstairs, and she just stuck her tongue out at me. I quickly looked to Emmett when I heard him laugh, and then I saw Edward glare at him. "What did he think?" I asked, curious as to what made Edward glare like that. It only looked like a pretend glare though. "Out of the Cullens, I'm the fastest, and since you beat Alice, Emmett was saying you could probably beat me. But, Emmett, she is probably stronger than you, so I don't get why you're laughing," Edward added on the end, and now it was Emmett's turn to glare. Hey, I am way stronger, Bella, right now, arm wrestle. Emmett said, walking towards me and rolling up his sleeve. I copied his movement, and sat down on the floor in front of Emmett. I don't know about this Emmett, she is feeling very confident. Verging on cocky, Jasper said, smirking at Emmett's momentary look of worry. Alice, if you're going to hide your thoughts, at least singing or hum a better song. Edward sighed in frustration. I immediately wondered what song she was singing. What is she singing? I asked, voicing my curiosity. Baby, by Justin Bieber. Edward almost growled while saying it. I laughed at his expression, as did Alice. I'm only doing it to annoy you, Edward, Alice said, as sweetly as possible. Okay. Let's do this, Emmett said, grabbing my hand. I reciprocated his tight grasp, and smiled at him. 3, 2, 1, go, Alice shouted, and I began pushing against Emmett's hand. I will give him some credit, he was pretty strong. Unfortunately, he wasn't quite as strong as me, and, before long, Emmett's hand was lying flat on the floor, underneath mine. Woo! Go Isabella! I heard Amelia shout, and I got up and jumped. Who's the strongest now, Edward asked, slipping his arm around my waist as he mocked Emmett. Just saying, Edward, if she is stronger than Emmett, it is highly likely she would be faster than you, Rosalie said, and I saw Edward's smug grin drop a bit. Anyway, how about we get back to what we originally wanted to discuss, Carlisle said, and everyone sat down. Now, Amelia and your family, my family has much enjoyed having you stay with us. But we would much like it if it was made a more permanent feature. How do you feel? Bella. OMG, of course Carlisle. Amelia screamed, running full speed and jumping on Carlisle. They both fell on the floor with a loud crash, but they were both laughing. Everyone else in Amelia's coven wanted to join the Cullens, which made me smile. I haven't had a family in years, and now I have one pretty huge one. We all decided that Amelia, Matthew, Darren, Harriet, Catherine and Sebastian would change their surnames to Cullen. They were all happy with this, and I started to wonder if I should. But, then, I didn't want Edward to think I just presumed that I deserved the surname Cullen. Our cover story for at school was going to be that Amelia and the rest's parents had died, so since they were our cousins, he Cullens were going to adopt them and be their new parents. Everyone decided that this was a good idea, and so the boys got back to building the large house extension. The rest of us decided to go shopping to buy some stuff to decorate with. Since it was the weekend, we were planning on spending all our time painting and decorating. Me, Esme, Alice and Catherine decided to go, leaving Amelia, Harriet and Rosalie to talk about cars and babies. I had also decided to get Amelia a little present for her and her baby, seeing as she had practically raised me. We seemed to spend hours and hours in the stores, looking for the perfect color for our rooms. Alice decided that she would take on Rosalie's room, Catherine would do Harriet's, and I would do Amelia's. Esme was going to be doing the downstairs living area of the new house, and was watching over everything. Found the right color yet? Esme asked me, and I could see the happiness seeping out of her. No, not yet, I want to go for like a turquoise color, which is probably the hardest color to find. Sorry I'm taking so long. I said, feeling bad I was holding everyone up. Honey, we have got forever. I think they won't mind if you spend a couple hours looking for the right paint. Alice certainly won't mind. Esme said, chuckling lightly. Okay, I said, and I resumed to scanning the lines of paints. How about this one? Esme said, holding the most beautiful shade of turquoise ever. It was slightly more blue than green, exactly what I had been imagining. OMG. Yes, I said, jumping up and down and squealing. I felt like Alice. Really? Esme said, looking surprised at my outburst. Yes. Thanks so much, I said, hugging her tightly. For the first time in 270-odd years, I felt like I had a mother. How many pots should we get then? Esme asked me. Loads. I just squealed, and ran off after telling Esme I was going to get Alice, who had the trolley. I tried my best to run at human speed, but I was so excited. Alice. Esme found the perfect color, I said, emphasizing the word perfect. Let's go then, Alice said, running off with the trolley. That's the 4th time she done that, Catherine said while rolling her eyes and laughing. We both ran off after Alice, and found her and Esme loading the trolley up with a mountain of paint. I looked at them curiously. You said you wanted loads, Esme said, and we all began laughing. On the way home, we only talked about how excited we were to start decorating. We hadn't bought any furniture yet, just paint, carpet, laminate flooring, curtains, and lights. We had decided it would be easier to order the furniture online, or, as Alice wanted, to make some. Her reasoning was, if Jasper can make a house, he can definitely make a sofa. When we all got out, we carried our supplies out to the house. For Amelia's room, I had got her a deep purple, seeing as purple was her favorite color. Before we could open the door, Rosalie opened it for us. Hey, I see you guys got a lot, Rosalie said, grinning towards our bags. Yeah, well, all we need now is for the guys to finish the house. Then we can decorate, Catherine said, making her way into the house. For Harriet and Darren's room, Catherine had chosen a dark green, to represent the outdoors. Alice had chosen light blue for Rosalie and Emmett's room, after having a vision. She never admitted this, but she decided pretty quickly on the color. We showed Amelia, Rosalie and Harriet the color paints for their rooms, and their faces lit up. We obviously chose well then. When will the house be ready? Harriet asked Alice, knowing she would be able to look forward and see. Well, how much is it worth to you? Alice said, smiling sweetly, but with an evil hint. You know that I'm a witch, right, and I'm sure you wouldn't want me to cast a baldness spell your way, now would you? Harriet said, returning Alice's wicked grin. I laughed out loud, for this may have been the first time someone actually got something out of Alice. Meanie, it should be finished by the early hours of tomorrow morning, Alice said, glaring towards Harriet, who smiled sweetly back. I decided to go and watch Edward work, mainly because I was missing him. We still haven't had a proper talk about what's going on with us, so hopefully we will soon. I ran out to where the extensions was being built, and almost laughed at what I saw. It was so surreal. There were 6 of them, all running round at full speed, ever so quickly building the extension. It seemed like I was watching something being fast forward. Every now and then the shape shifters would turn into some sort of bird to lift up the building materials to the top of the worksite. They really did all work so well with each other. Hey, come to watch us working? Emmett said, winking at me. Yeah, just making sure none of you were slacking, I said, to which he gave me a glare. Sorry to say, but none of us will be working shirtless, and we won't be sweating or anything, Emmett said, and I could have sworn I heard the others laughing. Oh, that's a shame, I should probably be off then, I replied, and then he stuck his tongue out at me. I also should get back to building, because I'm pretty sure Eddie is annoyed that I'm not letting him talk to you, Emmett said, while running away before Edward could hit him. Hey, sorry about Emmett, Edward sighed, while still seeming annoyed at his brother. Don't worry, I can handle him, I said, and Edward leaned down to kiss me. I kissed him back, and it was amazing. I wish I kissed him more. Why didn't I kiss him more? Right now, I liked the idea of constantly kissing him. I should do that. I was thinking we should probably have a talk about us, Edward sighed, but he seemed nervous, and it was so cute. Yeah, that would be good, I said, still slightly in dreamland from the kiss. I want to kiss him again. I know a place we can go which will hopefully give us some privacy from the others, because I'm pretty sure right now they're all listening in. Edward sighed, and I just nodded in agreement. I feared if I opened my mouth I would end up kissing him, so a nod seemed better. Before I realized it, Edward had picked me up and put me on his back, and was running off towards the forest. Even though I had run this fast before, being a passenger while someone was running at this speed was weird. Everything was flashing by, and I clung to Edward as if my life depended on it. Here we are, Edward sighed, and I hadn't realized we had stopped. I looked up and saw we were in a beautiful little meadow, in the middle of the forest. It was a circle shape, and was probably the only clearing for miles. It was very pretty, with lots of little flowers on the ground. Wow, this place is so pretty, I said, in awe of the place. Yeah, I found it once when I was running. The others don't know about this place. I like to keep it private, somewhere to get away from all their thoughts and just have my own, Edward mused, walking further into the clearing. He sat down on the grass, so I walked over and sat next to him. I can go if you want this place to be private. I won't come back, I said, feeling like I had intruded into his place. No, please don't go. I wanted to show you this place. I thought it could be like our private place if you want. Edward sighed, and again he was nervous. This time, I decided just to be confident and kiss him. He seemed to notice what I was doing, but didn't pull away, just closer. Soon, his lips were on mine, and I was thinking again about why I would ever stop kissing him. I could stay here forever. In a beautiful meadow, with a beautiful man, with a beautiful kiss. Can you describe a kiss as beautiful? Who cares, I just did. I think we should move on to the talking now, before I get carried away, Edward sighed, looking embarrassed. You're not the only one who's getting carried away. Anyway, why do you look embarrassed? I asked, curious. Maybe I had done something wrong. Because I'm not being very gentlemanly. My mother wouldn't be happy. Ah, he was too cute. He was embarrassed because he wasn't being a gentleman to me. That's okay, I don't mind, I said honestly. If it meant he would kiss me like that, then he didn't need to be a gentleman. So, back to the original topic about us. Is there even an us? Edward asked. Of course, as long as you're happy with that, I said, not wanting to jump to conclusions. Happy? I would be more than happy if you wanted to be mine, Edward sighed, beaming with happiness. Of course I want to be yours. Silly, I said playfully, and he just stuck his tongue out at me. Now I know why all my siblings and parents ever think about is their mate. The only thing I have been thinking of for the past few weeks is you, my Bella. Edward sighed, and I smiled happily when Edward called me his. I've been doing the same. Luckily in class 1 know the answers already, because I have been daydreaming a lot. I said, laughing at the memory of the look of shock on one of my teacher's faces when I answered correctly, even though I obviously hadn't been listening. Same, Edward sighed, chuckling as well. I guess it would be easier for him to answer as he could just read the teacher's mind and find the answer. You know the new extension well I was wondering if you maybe wanted to share a room? I asked, nervous in case I was being too forward. I considered taking back what I said, but Edward stopped me before I could. I would love to. I don't ever want to spend time away from you, Edward sighed, and I felt elated. He didn't want to spend time away from me, cue mini happy dance. Yay, was all I could squeak out, and Edward looked amused at my reaction. As much as I would like to stay here with you forever, I think my family, or Alice, would be annoyed if I didn't finish the extension on time. She would probably feel murderous. Edward sighed, and I laughed at what he said, knowing it was true. I'm pretty sure he would have Harriet to answer to as well. Okay, I said, sad that my private time with Edward was over. But also happy that we now both know what is happening with us, and that I'm Edward's. Edward picked me up and ran off with me again. I liked it better this time though, because it meant I could be close to him, and hug him. We got back to the house, and Edward went back to work. I sadly said goodbye, but tried to cover it up. Obviously it didn't work. I was an appalling liar. It's okay, love, we have forever, you can cope with a few hours away from me. Edward sighed. He called me love. Does that mean he loves me? He placed a quick kiss on my lips. He began to pull away, but I grabbed the back of his head to stop him. I held him there and passionately kissed him. I heard him moan, which made me moan. I wasn't complaining though, but I'm pretty sure the others wouldn't be happy with me keeping Edward away from helping. Who cares though? Not me, because I get to kiss Edward. Bella, I really should be helping, Edward sighed when there was a slight pause in our kiss. Edward, I moaned, which seemed to make him forget about the others. After a while, we reluctantly pulled away. I didn't hide my sadness this time, but he just shook his head and laughed. Bella, please, love. If you let me go and finish the extension quickly, then we can kiss for ages. And no one will get annoyed at us for it, Edward sighed, pleading with me. I agreed, but only because he called me love again. Meanie, you know I won't be able to say no to you, I said, and he just laughed. We said goodbye, but without a kiss as we both knew what would happen if we did. When I walked in the living room, all the girls were looking at me expectantly. So tell us what happened. Emilia finally squealed out. She had been spending way too much time with Alice. I don't know what you're on about, I said as casually as possible, while sitting down on one of the couches. Come on, Bella, we heard you guys out there before and after you left, Alice whined, so I gave in. I explained to them all about our talk, but I didn't mention anything about our meadow. That was our place. Ah, that's so sweet, Rosalie said, looking like she was proud of Edward. I'm happy he finally had found his mate, and that he is happy, Esme said, with tears in her eyes. I knew if she could she would be crying right now, but only tears of happiness. And I'm happy Bella has found hers, Emilia said, and she was actually crying. I went over and hugged her, incredibly happy that she was happy for me, if that makes sense. The rest of the night we were each on a laptop, looking for the furniture we wanted for our rooms. I saw a really nice king-sized bed. Even though I didn't need to sleep, I thought it would be nice to have it. There definitely weren't any other reasons why I would order a bed for a room I was sharing with Edward. Well, that's what I told myself and the others. No one believed it though. In the end I got a matching duvet cover set in the same color as the paint. I also got some drawers as me and Alice decided that we would turn Edward's old bedroom into a closet, with mine and Edward's clothes in. There would probably be mostly mine, but the thought was still there. By the time we had finished shopping, it was Saturday morning and the day when the extension should be finished. We were all on edge as we couldn't wait to finally get painting. The furniture was set to arrive later today, but Alice assured us everything would be fine and on time. We all walked out to see how the work was going. I was shocked when I saw that it was finished. I gasped out loud, as did everyone else bar Alice. Of course Alice wouldn't, this is Alice we are talking about. Why so shocked, ladies? We said it wouldn't take too long, Emmett said, grinning like a big kid. Rosalie walked over to him and gave him a big kiss, which I partly think was to shut him up. It's wonderful, better than I imagined, Esme said, walking over to the building. It was very impressive. It was 2 stories high, and about as big as the main house. It needed to be as well, since it had 4 bedrooms in it. One for me, one for Emilia and Matthew, one for Sebastian and Catherine, and the other for Darren and Harriet. We all walked inside to investigate the new extension. Inside, it was beautiful. Even though it hadn't been decorated fully yet, it was still amazing. There was a large staircase that led to the bedrooms. There was a small balcony on the top floor that looked down into the living area. Want me to show you to our new room? Edward sighed, shocking me as I didn't realize he was next to me. Yeah, sure, I said, running up the stairs with him. Here it is. It's next to me old one, and we put in a door, because I heard you're in Alice's plans to turn my old room into a closet. Edward sighed, as I stepped inside. The room was huge. There was more than enough room to fit in the king-sized I had ordered, along with all the other furniture. The walls were still white, and I was looking forward to painting them. It's amazing. It's so big, everything will definitely fit inside, I said to Edward, who was eagerly watching my reaction. What did you order? Edward asked, and I suddenly got nervous that I was jumping to conclusions with the bed. Oh, just furniture, I said, hoping he would drop it. What furniture? Why aren't you telling me? What could be so bad? Edward asked, if only he knew. A desk, some drawers for the other room, a bed, a bookshelf, I said, trying not to make a big deal out of the bed. But Edward heard me and stopped me. Well, here goes nothing. Why did you order a bed? Edward asked, and I was really getting embarrassed now. I felt my face heat up with my blush. Just for relaxing? I more asked than stated. Relaxing? Sure you didn't have anything else in mind? Edward asked, and I now realize he knew. He was going to hate me. I don't know what you mean, I thought playing stupid sounded best. However, Edward pulled me into a tight hug and kissed my forehead. When the time is right, a bed will definitely come in handy. But for now I think we should just go slowly. Okay? I mean, I don't want to hurt you or anything. Edward sighed as he quietly rocked me back and forth. It felt so relaxing. Thanks, I thought you were going to hate me for it, I said, and Edward kissed my forehead again. Hate you? How could I possibly hate you? I feel the opposite of hatred towards you. Edward sighed, and I gasped. The opposite of hatred? I asked, wanted him to say it, before I jumped to conclusion. Yes, Bella. I love you. Bella. After Edward told me he loved me, we spent the next week inseparable. At school, he would walk me to all my classes, and whenever we got home, we would stay in our room talking, listening to music, and anything else. It was really fun, and I never wanted to be apart from Edward. Things had calmed down in the house, even though we had more people. Everyone had settled down since moving in, and the gossip in Forks had changed to other things. Emilia's bump continued to grow, and she was getting more and more excited as it came closer to when she would be giving birth. We still weren't sure what the baby would look or be like, but only a tiny part of it would be human. In whatever amounts, it would be part human, part fairy, and part shape-shifter. Carlisle was looking forward to when it came, as well, because he would be officially an uncle. Everyone in the house was happy, and it felt nice. We were all one big happy family. One day, me and Edward were listening to some music, when Edward became tense. He became completely still, and was focused on nothing. I tried to get his attention, but it didn't work. "Edward, what the hell is going on?" I shouted at him, and he eventually snapped out of it. Before he could say anything, Alice had shot into the room. "Edward, don't. That's not going to help, you saw," Alice warned, so I realized she must have had a vision. "What did you have a vision of, Alice?" I asked, calm but with a stern edge. Hopefully she realized that I was going to make her tell me, one way or another. "The Volturi are paying us a visit. They know you and Amelia are here. Edward thought about running away with you both, but that's not going to work. I saw it wouldn't work. You have to stay here, because our clan outnumbers their clan," Alice said firmly, stopping Edward from running with me. "How long?" I asked, trying not to focus on the negatives. "About 5 minutes. Arrow only made his final decision now to mess with us. He knows Edward will want to run away, and he thinks that will happen, and he will get Edward. He realizes coming here he will be outnumbered, though. With him are Felix, Dimitri, Jane, and Alec. But, he doesn't know about our added clan members, so he doesn't realize just how outnumbered he is going to be," Alice said, smiling a bit at that. "Okay, Alice, you go gather everyone in the living room, and tell them about what you saw. I will talk to Edward, okay?" I asked, and she nodded and ran off, calling for everyone in a high-pitched voice. "Edward, look at me. Everything will be fine. You heard what Alice said, we outnumber them. They can't hurt me, all right, and if I have to, I will hurt them. Okay?" I asked, and he nodded slowly at me. "They have powers, Bella. Jane can inflict pain on you through her mind. They may not be able to kill you, but they can definitely hurt you," Edward sighed, looking worried. "Edward, mind powers don't work on me, and vampire strength barely affects me. Please, Edward, don't do anything stupid. I have a mind shield, so I will be fine. I promise," I said, smiling and lightly kissing him. That seemed to relieve him, until there was a knock at the door. We both ran down to the living room, and I saw everyone look nervous, apart from Amelia. She seemed to be focused on something, not paying attention to anything. I was puzzled by that, but just let it go. "Arrow, why might you be here?" Carlisle asked, sounding polite but with a hint of firmness in his voice. "I just came to visit the Cullen clan, seeing as we haven't seen each other in a while," Arrow said, trying to sound innocent. I fought the urge to run out to him and rip his head off. Idiot. "Well, we are busy at the moment. How about you come back another day? Or, we can visit you," Carlisle said, obviously trying to get rid of him. "No, Carlisle, we shall be coming in now," Arrow said, pushing past Carlisle. I heard Esme gasp, and run over to her husband. When Arrow got to the living room, Edward growled at him. "Edward, stop it, that isn't going to help," I said, tugging on his arm and trying to soothe him. "That's very wise, young girl. Now, are you Isabella Swan?" Arrow asked me, and now I was trying to soothe myself. "It's Bella, actually," I said, and I swear I heard Emmett laugh. "Well, Bella, I have heard so much about you from dear Amelia. I presume you have heard about me?" Arrow asked, seeming pleased with himself. Freak. "Yeah, I have actually. About how you tortured her husband so you could force information out of her?" I asked, trying my best to sound innocent. "Jane," Arrow commanded, and the little girl who I presumed was Jane came forward, and stood in front on me. I saw her eyes focus on me, and I laughed. "Your mind paint thingy won't work on me, don't bother," I said, smiling at her. She let out a frustrated growl, and looked to Arrow. "How about we try with Edward?" Arrow said, and Jane made her way forward. I stepped in front of her, and when she tried to get round me, I forcefully pushed her back. Everyone looked shocked, but Arrow the most shocked. Jane just walked forward again, and pushed me away. She got to Edward before I could do anything. She began staring at Edward and muttered pain, but nothing happened. Everyone stared at her curiously, and I looked over to see Amelia smiling triumphantly. She got up, and walked over to Jane. "Hey Jane, we meet again. Only, this time in better circumstances. You see, the last time we met, you couldn't torture me, but you could torture Matthew. Well, since then, I have been working on my mind shield. Now, I am able to stretch it and place it over whoever I like. This means that everyone in the Cullen clan is now unaffected by any of the Volturi's mind powers," Emilia said, smiling the whole time. Everyone looked to Emilia, completely shocked by what she had done. She just smiled at them, and I fought the urge to high-five her. "Since we have discovered a new talent of yours, there is still the offer to join the Volturi?" Arrow stupidly asked Emilia. "Do you think I'm stupid? Why would anyone in their right mind join you?" She spat at him, looking appalled. "I think you are far from stupid, I think you would fit in excellently," Arrow said, somehow remaining calm. "Look, Arrow, my plans don't include joining your guard. No, they include destroying your guard," Emilia said, and as soon as she finished, she threw Arrow across the room. He was about to get up, when something stopped him. It was as if there was a wall keeping the Volturi clan away from us. "What's happening?" Carlyle asked, looking scared and relieved at the same time. "I created an invisible wall to stop them hurting us," Harriet said. Arrow looking confusingly at her, so she walked over to him. "I'm a witch, so it was pretty easy, you know, for trying to hurt my husband's brother. I may have to use one of my many spells to destroy you all, you realize?" Harriet said, holding her wand up to Arrow. "Carlyle, I really have to hand it to you. You're like me. You like to have a clan full of extra special supernatural creatures. I just never knew you had this many," Arrow said, and that made Edward go crazy. He ran over to Arrow, and began punching him and pulling of limbs. For some reason, the wall allowed Edward to attack Arrow, but not the other way round. "Edward, son, wait a minute," Carlyle said, halting Edward. "Why?" Edward asked, but Carlyle didn't answer him. "All you have done is brought pain and suffering into the vampire world. I understand we need laws, otherwise humans would have long ago found out about us. But the way you rule is not to help vampires, but to help yourself. You rule by fear, and just kill anyone who gets in the way. I hope you will spend the rest of eternity burning in hell," Carlyle said, before ripping off Arrow's head. Jasper and Emmett quickly started a fire, and began chucking in pieces of Arrow. After Arrow was officially gone, now just ashes, Emmett, Jasper and Edward moved on to Jane, Dimitri, Alec and Felix. After a while, all the Volturi that had come were now officially gone, and the fire had been put out. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Carlyle said, to no one in particular. "I couldn't help it, so I burst out laughing. As did Emilia, and pretty much everyone else." Carlyle had a look of confusion on his face, so I decided to explain. "I had only known Arrow for a few minutes, and I already wanted to kill him. I'm just happy I didn't have to do it and end up ripping my clothes," I said, and Carlyle started laughing. "I think we need to pay a visit to Italy, to tell Marcus, Keys and Heidi," Carlyle said, after he finished laughing. "Is that a good idea, honey? They might be mad?" Esme asked, sounding worried. "Don't worry, Mom, we have a witch, 2 indestructible half-fairies, 4 shapeshifters and 7 vampires, 3 of which have powers," Emmett said, and I laughed at our odd-sounding family. It was a perfect family to me, anyway. "Okay. I will call the pilot then," Esme said, running off into the kitchen. I smiled to Edward, and kissed him lightly. "You were really good, sweetie," I said to him, as everyone else began their conversations. "How do you work that out?" Edward asked, sounding quite confused. "Because, if I were you, I would have killed Arrow the moment he stepped through the door," I said, and he laughed at me. "I almost did, if it wasn't for you, Edward Said," and I was about to reply when Alice squealed. Everyone looked at her, scared, but Edward just chuckled softly. Nothing serious then. "We have to pack," Alice screeched, and grabbed me, Rosalie, Harriet, Catherine and Emilia, and ran upstairs. She shoved us all into our separate rooms, but kept running in every few seconds to put something extra in our suitcases. I really feel sorry for Jasper sometimes. After not too long, we were all running. Well, the shapeshifters and Harriet were flying, but you get what I mean, through the forest, to go to the private jet. Carlyle had told us that their pilot was also a vampire, so he understood our situation. We quickly loaded ourselves and our bags onto the plane, and began to take off. We put our seatbelts on, but I'm not too sure why, as we don't really need them. The plane flew quickly, so that we could explain to Keys, Marcus and Heidi the situation, before some nomad did. We arrived in Italy a few hours later, and quickly found a forest we could run through to quickly get to Volterra. Once we got there, we tried to be careful, no knowing if the remaining Volturi knew about what had happened, and if they were mad. We got to the Volturi castle, and managed to get in easily seeing as there were practically no guards. "Carlyle, what are you doing here?" Marcus asked, sounding worried. "Returning the visit Arrow just made to me and my family," Carlyle said calmly. "Don't you mean coven not family?" Marcus spat at Carlyle. "No, I meant family, seeing as Amelia here is actually my sister," Carlyle said, making Marcus speechless. "What have you done to our brother, Arrow?" Keyes asked. "Killed him," Jasper answered shortly. "How dare you tell such a lie?" Keyes shouted at us. "We're not lying. We also killed Alec, Jane, Dimitri and Felix," Emmett said, stepping towards Keyes. "How dare you murder our coven? And not just any coven, the vampire leaders," Marcus shouted, looking worried. "Because they tried to hurt our family," Edward Said, also stepping closer. "They deserved what they got. They tortured my husband, and held me prisoner. Just like you three," Amelia said to the three of them. Out of them all, Heidi looked the most scared. "I don't like the way you are threatening us. You're going to regret killing our coven," Marcus said, before lunging at Jasper. However, Alice had seen he was going to do this, and so blocked him before he could hurt Jasper. Edward lunged at Keyes then, obviously reading what he was about to do. Everything was happening so fast, and I couldn't keep track of who was winning and who was losing. I'm pretty sure the Cullens were winning, seeing as we massively outnumbered the Volturi clan. Before I could react, Keyes lunged at me, and grabbed me. After that everything seemed to stop. All eyes were on me and Keyes, and the only pair that didn't look scared was Amelia's. She knew Keyes couldn't kill me, and no matter how many times you try and tell vampires you're practically indestructible, they will not listen. "What are you gonna do now, Edward? I could kill your precious little girlfriend so quickly," Keyes said, to which I just laughed. "Oh, you can you?" I asked Keyes, who seemed very confused by behavior. "Why aren't you afraid, you idiot?" Keyes screamed in my ear, and proceeded to tighten his grip on me. "Amelia, you know what to do," I said, and she smiled at me, knowing what I meant. All the Cullens look at us, trying to work out what we were doing. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, I shouted, and Amelia ran straight to me while I wrestled out of Keyes' grip. Amelia was there seconds later, helping Keyes off me. Soon, me and Amelia had him pinned to the ground, much to the amusement of the Cullens. "What the hell are you?" Keyes screamed about, but me and Amelia just ignored him. "Me and Jasper can take care of him," Emmett said, and we carefully handed Keyes over. "How the heck did you two do that?" Edward asked as he walked over to me. "Don't underestimate us, just because we're girls," I told him, then gave him a kiss. We heard a fire being started, and some screams, so we presumed that Keyes must be gone then. "So, what are we going to do now then?" Edward asked, and I got confused. I saw Alice smiling very happily, and was about to ask why, when she began to explain. "We are going to be the new ruling vampires, but not anything like the Volturi. We are going to burn down this place, after releasing all the nomad vampires they've captured over the years. We tell them to spread the news of the new leaders, and we head back to Forks. We find a forest area of America, and turn that into our home, and where we rule from. We create new rules, which I will explain later, and then we make a register of every known vampire. We still have to protect our kind from being found out by humans, but we're more humane, you could say, about ruling. Also, we still go to school every once in a while, but never all together as that would raise suspicions. Finally, the main leader we have is Carlyle, considering he is now one of the oldest living vampires," Alice explained, and everyone just smiled at this, without saying anything. "Okay, so, how about Esme, Edward, Jasper, Alice, Rosalie and Emmett go down to where the nomad vampires are, and tell them about what's happened. Catherine, Harriet, Matthew, Darren and Sebastian, could you possibly start looking for places in America where we could build our new house? Amelia and Bella, would you mind if I have a word with you, in private?" Everyone accepted what Carlyle said, and went off to do what they were told. As three ran out into the surrounding forests, so that no one else could hear our conversation. When we were far enough away, Carlyle began talking. "I know Alice said I would be the main leader, But I wanted to offer the position to you too. You are both incredibly strong, and you are pretty much indestructible. Also, you have a much wider knowledge of everything supernatural than I do. Carlyle said, and I looked to Amelia and nodded, knowing what she was about to say. Carlyle, it's not all about how much we know, it's about our ways of leading. You are a much better leader than us, and you're a vampire. I'm not sure many vampires would like it if not even an actual vampire was leading their race. Also, I think me and Isabella would like to share our knowledge with you, and everyone else. It's stupid keeping it so secret, and it will help everyone else lead. Amelia said, smiling at her brother. Anyway, I've got a baby to deal with, she said, making him laugh. I looked and saw her stomach had grown since I had last seen, and was now noticeable that she was pregnant. I don't want to force you into sharing your knowledge, you don't have to, Carlyle said. No, we want to. I replied, I wasn't going to take no for an answer. We all walked back to the castle at human speed, just enjoying our last few hours of not being important, or major leaders to any kind of race. Bella. A week after the killing of the Volturi, and we were back in Forks again. Everyone who was being held captive inside the Volturi castle was released, and told about us as the new rulers. Of course they were supportive, because we freed them. They then promised to tell all vampires and other creatures about us. Then, an accident caused the Volturi castle to go up in flames, and we were then free to leave Italy. Right now, we were looking for somewhere we would rule from, but it would be more like a permanent house. We didn't want it too far away from civilization, but somewhere not too close to humans. In the end, we decided on Alaska, because then our permanent house could be in the hills, and we would have lots of animals for the vampires to eat, and vegetation for me and Amelia. What you thinking about? Edward asked as he came and sat by me. I was watching as most of the men were busy constructing our new house. Just how much things have changed in the few months I've known you. I told him, sighing happily. He wrapped his arm around my waist, and pulled me closer to him. I gave him a quick kiss, but it soon turned more heated. I was really getting into it, until I heard Emmett. Get a room, he shouted, while laughing at his own joke. Edward and I quickly pulled apart, and I blushed from embarrassment. Shut up, Emmett, and get back to building, Edward shouted back. Sorry, I muttered when Edward turned to look at me. He gave me a quick peck on the lips. Don't be sorry, I love you, Bella, Edward says, kissing my forehead. Love you too, I tell him, snuggling into him. I hear you and Amelia are going to share your secret knowledge, Edward says. Yeah, we felt it was stupid keeping it so secret, and if we're going to be ruling, it's best to know all the details, I explained to him. Family meeting, Carlyle's voice sounded out. We all rushed over to where he was, and I had to stifle a laugh when I saw the makeshift dining room he had set up. It was basically just a few logs all arranged. What's so funny? Edward whispered, but everyone would still hear, so I just shook my head. Nice dining room, Dad, Emmett's voice boomed, so I started laughing. I heard Amelia laughing too, as well all sat down. All right, Emmett. Now, I called everyone here, because I wanted to speak about school. At that, everyone groaned very loudly in displeasure. Right, that went down well, Carlyle muttered. What I wanted to ask was if anyone wanted to attend school this year, or whether they wanted to hold off for a few years. Oh, and everyone is going to have to go to school at least once every 10 years, to keep up the interaction with humans, Carlyle said, and was met with another groan from everyone. But Dad, that's not fair, because Esme doesn't have to go to school, Edward whined. It suddenly occurred to me that Amelia was like a sister to me, and so that in turn meant Carlyle was like a brother to me. But, to Edward, Carlyle was his father. So that means I'm kinda with my brother's son, my nephew. I felt quite sick at that thought. Well, Edward's son, it would look very wrong if I was a doctor, yet married to Esme, who would be a student in school. Plus, she's too old, Carlyle said, and Esme turned to look at him. Too old? I'm only 26, Esme protested, and Carlyle quickly realized his mistake. Meeting abandoned, Carlyle quickly said, and he all ran away from the affection that Carlyle is likely to be showing Esme. Jasper caught up with me, when I went back to where I was sitting before. How come in the middle of the meeting you suddenly felt nauseous? Oh, are you pregnant? Jasper asked. Shush, and no, I am most definitely not pregnant, I said quickly, but I could already see Edward's face looking in our direction. "Sorry, but how come then?" Jasper asked. "You're going to think I'm stupid," I muttered, embarrassed and still a little nauseous. "Try me," Jasper said. "Fine. I was just thinking how Amelia is like a sister to me, and that would kinda make Carlisle like a brother to me. But Edward sees Carlisle as a father figure, so wouldn't that mean that I'm basically doing my nephew?" I asked, and Jasper looked like he was contemplating something. "You know I'm going to leave this down to Edward," Jasper said. "He's making you say that, isn't he?" I asked, and Jasper quickly nodded before running off, and then Edward promptly took his place sitting next to me. "You know none of us are actually related, don't you?" Edward asked me slowly. "Yes, I'm not that stupid, it's just kinda weird," I muttered. "How so?" Edward asked. "Well, if we got married one day, what would that make Carlisle to me?" "My brother or my father-in-law?" I asked, and then realized what I'd said. "Not that I want us to get married. I mean, like, right away. Of course one day I do. But, no pressure. I mean, I'm not expecting you to propose or anything. We still haven't even officially said what we are, and here I am presuming we'll get married. I'm sorry, I'll just go and—" I rambled on, prepared to keep going, but Edward stopped me. Shit, I messed things up. I'm such an idiot. I felt the tears well up in my eyes, so I looked down at my hands in my lap. "Bella, look at me. Please?" Edward asked, so I shook my head. He huffed, but continued anyway. "I would love for one day to be able to call you my wife. And I thought you knew where we were." Edward sighed, and my head snapped up. Edward took this as his opportunity to kiss me. "Oh, so, we're friends?" I asked when he stopped kissing me. Edward then laughed, so I looked back down again. "Or not," I muttered. "No, we're not friends." Edward sighed, and I felt the tears again. I got up to leave, but Edward held my hands, stopping me from. "If it's all right with you. I thought we were more than friends. You know, dating? As in, boyfriend and girlfriend?" Edward asked, and I threw myself at him. Literally. The force of me pushed him off his log seat, and soon enough I was lying on top of him, kissing him incredibly passionately. "I take it that's a yes?" Edward asked smugly. I kissed him again, and just as he was getting into it, I stopped. "Ha!" I said, and then quickly ran away. He started chasing me, but he was slightly faster than me, so he eventually caught up to me. By this time, I was deep in the forest that would be surrounding our new home. Edward was stalking towards me, so I quickly ran a bit further. I stopped, however, when I reached a small clearing. It was really beautiful, and I heard Edward run and then stop, much like I had. "It's beautiful," I whispered, while looking round. I let out a small yelp of surprise as Edward's arms wrapped around my waist. I wanted to kiss him, so I turned around in his arms and reached up to kiss him. But, before I could, he stopped me so he could speak. "Are you going to let me finish this time?" he asked, smirking. "Depends how far you want to finish things," I said, and his lips were on mine as soon as the last word was out. I eagerly kissed him back. But, he broke apart, although only to lower us to the ground. We resumed our kissing, and my hands moved up into his hair. "Bella, have you ever you know?" Edward asked awkwardly. I bet if he could blush, he would be right now. "Had sex?" "No, have you?" I asked bluntly. "No, but why haven't you?" Edward asked, sounding shocked. "I've never found the right person until now," I said, hoping he felt the same way. "You mean me?" Edward asked, still sounding shocked. I just nodded, and Edward put his lips back on mine. But, again, Edward stopped. "So are you ready, now?" Edward asked nervously. "If you are, yes," I replied, hoping I sounded confident. "If you're not, I don't mind." Edward sighed. "I am more than ready, my love," I told him, and kissed him. This time when he stopped though, I actually growled. "Eager," Edward muttered. "This will be the last time I stop, I promise. Anyway, what I was going to say is, I don't have any protection, but I don't think that'll be a problem, because I wouldn't be able to get you pregnant anyway," Edward explained. "What? Why can't you get me pregnant? If Amelia can, and she's the same creature as me, then I can too, you know," I told him. "No, I don't mean there's something wrong with you, it's me. Vampires can't make babies," Edward sighed, somewhat sadly. "How do you know?" I asked him quietly. "Because it's never happened before, and never will." Edward Said, looking down. Hey, I don't care if you can get me pregnant or not. All I want is you, and you do not stop kissing me. I told him, and I heard him chuckle before he looked up. His eyes were darker, and he quickly latched his lips onto mine. He didn't stop this time. Instead, he very tentatively put his hand under my top, and played and massaged my breasts. My moans spurred him on, and he broke the kiss so he could pull off my top quickly. I also undid my bar, and threw it aside. Edward had wide eyes when he saw my breasts, and froze for a moment, but quickly started massaging them again, and started playing with my nipples. Please, I whimpered, needing more from him. What do you want, Bella? Edward asked, his voice all husky. Do you want me to suck on your breasts? Edward asked, and I moaned again. Yes, please. Edward, the first need, I whimpered as his mouth latched onto my nipple, while his fingers played with the other. I quickly undid the buttons on Edward's shirt, and took it off him while admiring his chest. Unfortunately, his mouth left my breast, but only so he could undo and pull down my jeans painfully slowly. Edward moaned when he saw me left in just my panties, and quickly kissed me again. I took this as my opportunity to take off Edward's trousers. I moaned when I saw his very large erection, straining against his boxers. I gave it a gentle stroke, and Edward moved his hips against my hand for extra friction. Oh God, Bella, I'm afraid I won't last long. Oh God, I feel like a pubescent teenager. Edward moaned. I giggled a bit, before pulling his boxers down, freeing him. I stroked him again, which he seemed to really enjoy. Bella, if I'm naked, I think you should be too. Edward Said in the husky voice again. I quickly nodded, and Edward ripped, yes, as in, to shreds, my panties. Edward, I gasped. What? I couldn't wait, he said, and then stroked my pussy way too gently. Edward, more, I whimpered, and moved my hips. His finger began circling my clit, and I was rocking my hips into his hand. Very slowly, his hand moved down, and he tentatively pushed a finger inside me, and began moving it in and out. Yes, Edward, faster, please, I begged, moving my hips more. He responded quickly, by picking up the pace and adding another finger. His thumb was back to my clit, rubbing circles on it. My breathing became more ragged, and my heart rate picked up. Are you close, Bella? Are you going to come all over my hand? Edward asked, and it sent me over. My orgasm ripped through my body, and I felt like I was going to explode. Edward slowly took his hand away from my pussy, and I saw it was covered in my cum. I watched in awe as he raised his hand to his mouth, and sucked off the juices. My turn, I said, and Edward looked confused until I pushed him back, and was sitting in between his legs. Bella, no, you don't have to, Edward Said quickly, trying to move away. I want to, and, by the looks of it, you want me to, too, I said, and I began stroking his penis. I didn't really know what to do, so I slowly leaned over and licked it. Edward moaned very loudly, so I took more of him in my mouth. I began moving faster, which Edward seemed to really. Bella, oh, I'm gonna come, you should stop, oh my Bella, Edward whimpered, but I made no effort to stop. All of a sudden, Edward's entire body was shuddering, and hot spurts of his cum were being released into my mouth. I swallowed it all, and looked up to see Edward looking back at me with shock. Sorry if that grossed you out, I guess you don't want to kiss me, I muttered sheepishly. Why wouldn't I? That was hot, Edward Said, and he quickly kissed me to prove it. I felt him already start getting hard, and I moved my hips so it was rubbing against me. Edward noticed what I was doing, and began moving his hips too, teasing my entrance. You ready, love? Edward whispered into my ear. Yes. I love you, Edward. I told him. I love you too. Oh, and I'll try to go slow, but it may be a bit hard. Edward Said, and I giggled. Slowly, he pushed himself into me, and I'll admit, it was a bit painful at first, and I winced slightly. Edward saw this, and stopped moving, but I moved my hips to keep him going. He did, but very slowly. Most of the pain had gone now. Faster, I moaned. Are you sure? Isn't it painful? Edward asked. It was, but it's not as bad now. Please, Edward, let go, I tell him, and I grab his head and pull him to me to give him a kiss. As soon as I did, he started moving faster, and I moaned at pleasure. Edward set a relatively fast pace, and when I saw him start shuddering, I knew he was close, because I wanted to orgasm with him. I reached down between us and began to touch my clit, and I felt myself get closer. Oh Bella, I'm close, and that is so hot, Edward sighed. I nodded, and soon enough my orgasm washed over me, and so did Edward's. I felt his release fill me up, and we both lay next to each other, completely spent, but completely happy. I loved him so much. Bella. We lay in each other's arms for almost an hour after our lovemaking. Wow, that was just wow, Edward muttered lazily. Yeah, we should probably head back to the others now, though, they'll be wondering where we are. Edward nodded in response, and we began getting dressed. However, just as I was about to put on my panties, all I saw was a small pile of material. Edward, as hot as it was when you tore off my panties, I kinda don't actually have any underwear to wear, I said. Edward laughed in response, before throwing me his boxers. Here. Wear these. They might be a bit big, but Edward trailed off. What will you wear? I asked, although I already had an idea of what his reply would be. Under my jeans? Nothing. Edward sighed simply, and I moaned a bit. Like the sound of that? Edward asked, smiling smugly. I launched myself at him, and pinned him to the ground. Edward was only wearing his shirt, and I was still completely naked. I saw Edward's eyes beginning to fill with lust, and his penis was getting harder. I leaned down, pretending I was going to kiss him, but quickly ran off to the other side of the meadow before our lips touched. Edward lay there, stunned, and then let out a half-groan, half-growl. He quickly got up, and ran towards me. I yelped, and began to run up a tree, but I was too slow. He quickly caught me, while we were halfway up the tree. I wonder if anyone has ever had sex halfway up a tree? You're an evil little vixen, did you know? Edward sighed, but the glint in his eyes told me he was joking with me. You were being too smug, so I put you in your place, I replied, and Edward began to get a mischievous smile on his face. Instead of putting me in my place, I'd rather you put me in your place. More specifically, here. To emphasize his innuendo, Edward ran his finger gently along my clit. My mind was screaming at me to try and stay calm, but my body betrayed me by arching into Edward's hand, and by moaning. Edward smirked again. I wonder if anyone has ever had sex in a tree? If I wasn't certain that Edward couldn't read my mind, I would have thought he had. I just thought that, I exclaimed. Edward looked at me like I was crazy, then he suddenly froze, jumped down from the tree, and started running around the meadow insanely fast, before returning to me with my clothes, being fully dressed. What the hell was that about? I asked as I quickly got dressed. Instead of replying, Edward putting his finger over my lips, and shushed me. I looked down into the meadow, and sniffed, trying to smell any danger. I couldn't smell anything, so I peered into the meadow again. Suddenly, a blurred form shot through the forest and out into the meadow. Sparkles were coming off his body, in the sunlight I hadn't realized was present. I looked over the still form, and instantly recognized him. Why was Edward hiding from him? EDDDWWAAARRRRDDDD, Blah. I know you're here, come out. Come out, wherever you are, Emmett's booming voice sang out. Right now, he was facing in the opposite direction, so I decided to scare him. I jumped down from the tree, angling myself in his direction, and landed on his back. I put my hands over his eyes, and, in my best imitation of Edward's voice, said, "Guess who?" Emmett laughed after the shock wore off, and Edward growled lowly. You know, I'm thinking it's Edward. Although, he must have lost some weight, because Emmett was cut off as Edward, like me, jumped from the trees. I managed to escape quickly, while Edward tackled Emmett. What are you doing here, you big oaf? Edward asked. Aside from interrupting your lovemaking, Emmett announced, at which I blushed furiously at. I came here on Carlisle's orders. Sorta. He told me to tell you guys that the house is finished, and so we are having a big family meeting. Couldn't you just have thought that from a couple miles away? Edward demanded. This way was more fun. Edward was about to lunge for Emmett again, but Emmett ran off into the woods, leaving Edward and I alone again. Such a fun spoiler damn cockblocker. I was just about to have sex in a tree. Who does that? I only just lost my virginity. Sometime alone would be nice. He'll pay later. Edward muttered. I giggled, for Edward didn't seem to realize he was vocalizing his thoughts. For someone who has only just lost their virginity, you become pretty sex-obsessed, I joked. We will have sex in a tree. Just not right now. Edward sighed firmly. Then, he kissed me, before throwing me on his back and running back to where our new house was. Once we got there, Edward stopped abruptly, and we both stared in awe. "It's beautiful and massive," Edward sighed slowly. "That's not the only thing that's beautiful and massive," I muttered in response. We heard Emmett's laughter booming in the distance, along with Jasper's, Matthew's, Darren's, and Sebastian's. We ran inside, right into the dining room, where everyone was sat around the massive table. I sat next to Amelia, with Edward on my other side. "Right, okay, so, firstly, I think we should decide who is going to school first, since we have 14 in our family, and 2 of which won't be attending school." At this, Carlisle and Esme looked over at each other, before quickly looking away again. "I was thinking if we wait 2 or 3 years while everything settles down, then 4 or 6 people at a time will attend school." "Okay?" Carlisle asked. Although no one wanted to go to school, we knew we had to keep up the human interaction. "There was something Bella and I want to say, if that's okay?" Amelia asked. I looked at her, confused, but she held up her book with all the secrets in. "Yes, that's fine," Carlisle replied, so Amelia and I walked up to the front. "Right, so you all know that Bella and I have an extensive knowledge of all things supernatural. I originally compiled all this knowledge, and then I wrote it out into 2 books, one for Bella, and one for me. Since we have decided to pass on this knowledge, I thought it would be easier to write it out in 12 more books, rather than bore you all with a lecture that would take hours." At this, Amelia passed me a pile with 6 large books, exact replicas of mine, only less wear and tear. I handed out the 6, while Amelia handed out the others. Everyone immediately began reading, and there were small gasps every now and then. "Wait, so, there are 2 different types of werewolves?" Edward asks incredulously. "Yes. One breed is called the werewolves, and they are more common. They change when there is a full moon, something they can't control, and have to be bitten to become one. No genetics involved. The other breed, however, is a form of shapeshifter. They can only change to one form, though, which is a wolf. They can control this, and the gene is passed on through family, and is awakened when vampires, their natural enemy, are present," I explained, hoping to stop any confusion. "Wow. Pixies are real? People always say I remind them of a pixie," Alice asks. "Yes, I've met a couple. They're quite nice, the ones I met, but some can be quite the troublemaker. They are usually smaller than humans, but not quite as small as fairies are meant to be," I said. Amelia and I spent the next couple of hours explaining the creatures some of them had never heard about. We talked about fairies, pixies, witches, wizards, shapeshifters, werewolves, elementals, mermaids, and countless other creatures. "Now on to the next part of our meeting. We need to make some rules regarding our new leadership," Carlisle announced. "First and foremost should be, do not reveal yourself to a human unless absolutely necessary. Then, you can expand on that for each different species," Jasper said. "That's a very good rule," Carlisle said, and then he wrote down what Jasper said on a whiteboard that took up almost the whole wall. "Do not change other humans to be like you unless they specifically ask you to. So, vampires can't make newborn armies," Amelia added. "No immortal children." Edward sighed. "You must always have sex with your partner. At least once a day," Emmett said, and Rosalie hit him on the back of his head. "Well, you're not getting sex for a month," she said. The look on Emmett's face was priceless. He looked absolutely devastated. "But, baby, how will I show you how much I love you?" Emmett said, making his eyes well up and everything. "By telling me," Rosalie said, trying not to give in. "How will I be able to resist your gorgeous, beautiful, amazing body?" Emmett asked again. "I'm beautiful, huh?" Rosalie said. I could already see she was beginning to give in. "The most beautiful and sexiest woman in the world. I love you so much," Emmett pleaded. Somehow, Rose bought that, and they began making out like hormonal teenagers. I guess, in a way, they were. Soon, they were both running to their new room, to christen it, as they said. Jasper and Alice also went, as Jasper got a big wave of the lust emotion, and also sent out that emotion to everyone else. The meeting was ended, with everyone going to their separate rooms. I was about to, but Edward stopped me. "How about we try that tree sex?" Edward asked while kissing my face and neck gently. I nodded slightly, and so Edward carried me in his arms, running until we reached the meadow. He climbed up the tree, still carrying me, and went right up to the top. The trunk and branches were really thin here, and it looked quite precarious. "It'll be fine, love. Anyway, we'll survive the small drop," Edward says, grinning as he sits down on one of the slightly thicker branches. I stand awkwardly on a branch just below him, and hold on to the truck. Slowly, and very carefully, I unbutton Edward's shirt, and rest it on another branch. I climb up to a branch opposite him, and we begin kissing. We stop, so that he can take off my top, and then we quickly resume. His hands go straight to my breasts, and he quickly takes off my bra. I begin undoing his trousers, and pull them off. I forgot he wasn't wearing any underwear. My hand brushes against his penis and his hips buck, creating friction. I take off my trousers, and Edward's boxers quickly follow. "I think you're going to have to sit on my lap for this to work," Edward says. I carefully move over to Edward's branch, and sit on his lap. Edward moans, before taking one of my nipples into his mouth. I moan in reply, and begin moving my hips for extra friction. My arousal I almost dripping onto Edward's leg. I'm so needy for him right now. "Uck, Edward, more, I need more," I whisper breathlessly. "What do you want, my love?" Edward asks, stopping sucking on my nipple but idly playing with the other one, rolling in between his fingers. "You, inside me." I tell him honestly. "What part of me?" "My fingers." He pauses, before reaching down and pushing two of his incredible fingers inside me, before quickly taking them out. "My tongue?" After this, he lifts me up, so my legs dangle over his shoulders and my pussy is right next to his face. Then, he roughly pushes his tongue ever so slight inside him, before putting me back where I was before, sat on his lap. "My penis?" He lifts me up, and pushes me quickly back down on his penis. "Yes, yes, 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 yes," I shout out. Edward smirks at me, but I don't care, because I needed this so bad. I begin to tentatively move up and down. Edward helps me at first, by placing his hands on my hips and moving me. After I start to get better moving on my own, Edward's hands move to my breasts, where he plays with my nipples again. "Oh God, Edward, I'm so close already," I moan, and Edward chuckles a bit at that. His one hand leaves my breast, and instead moves to my clit. He starts rubbing small, fast circles there. I can feel my body being coated in a layer of sweat at his actions. Soon, too soon, maybe, I'm coming and riding out an intense orgasm. I lean my head on his shoulder, tired and spent, but Edward keeps moving inside me. His fingers stay on my clit, keeping up the small circles. It's too soon after my previous orgasm, the pleasure is so intense. Edward the first don't think I can go again so soon. I mutter wearily. He, however, keeps going. I then realize that he didn't orgasm when I did, and guess that's why he keeps going, but I don't know why his hand stays on my clit. I reluctantly heard many of Emmett and Rosalie's sexual encounters, and this apparently gives the woman an incredibly amazing orgasm. Edward explains. I moan and begin to move my hips, to meet his thrusts, but I'm still so tired. It does, though, feel amazing. "Oh Bella, I'm so close," Edward mumbles. His hand stays on my clit, and he keeps thrusting in and out of me, getting harder and faster. Soon enough, I can feel the cum from Edward's penis coating my insides, and there's lots of it. More than before. Still, though, Edward doesn't stop. "Are you close, love?" Edward asks. His penis is still inside me, but it's not as hard, and it's not moving. "Sorta." I respond weakly. Edward's mouth quickly latches onto my nipple. I moan very loudly at all the sensations. Edward's free hand grabs one of mine, and brings it down to his other hand. Both our hands work together in massaging my clit. "I'm close now," I tell Edward. This approaching orgasm feels so much stronger than my other, just like Edward Said. He keeps going faster and faster until he reaches vampire speed. My orgasm washes through me like a tsunami, and I very nearly black out. I clench down on Edward's penis, and he moans as his penis moves a bit. I eventually recover, and look up to see Edward grinning smugly. "Told you it was powerful." Edward grins, proud of himself. I stick my tongue out at him, like a child, and he responds by kissing me. The end. Thanks for watching. Do like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to drop your reviews in comment section and new story ideas.